Good evening. I call this meeting of the Pearland Independent School District Board of Trustees to order on September 11th, 2018 at 5:01 p.m. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The records show that trustees Carbone, Murphy, Gooden, Decker, Barry, Floyd, and Botkin are all present. All right, and we do not have any public speaking.
Okay.
So, the Board of Trustees will adjourn into closed session at 5:02. All right, the board will reconvene in open session at 5:59 p.m. No action was taken in closed session. Do I have any motion for?
Madam President, I move we accept and approve the superintendent's recommendation for employment of personnel as presented. Second.
So a motion made by Mr. Gooden and a second by Mr. Murphy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I shall call for the vote. All those in favor? The motion carries 7-4 and 0 against. Okay. We are going to go into opening remarks.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. There's a lot going on this month. First, want to. No, I got it. Don't worry. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I got it.
Okay.
We want to, I guess, just give a shout out to our Jewish brothers and sisters and our Muslim brothers and sisters who are celebrating the New Year with Rosh Hashanah and Muharram. So shout out to everybody who's celebrating that. And there's a lot going on in October as far as causes. This month is, a lot going on in September as far as causes. This is Attendance Awareness Month, Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and Suicide Prevention Month. And in fact, today is World Suicide Prevention Day. And in one way or another, our district, our families have been affected by all of those causes. So I just want to, draw your attention to them. And particularly on suicide prevention, thanks to the administration, to the district who's fighting this every day, the counselors who, just aren't on the front page. But, thank you very much for your work. All right. Also, we remember that today is September 11th, and 17 years ago, we remember the Americans who lost their lives and who fought and who still fight on our behalf. And if you would please stand and join me in a moment of silence, followed by the pledges. Thank you. May God continue to bless our country. Amen. Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam President, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to go into our public hearing.
Madam President, members of the board, there's a requirement before adopting the tax rate that if there's any citizen here who would like to speak directly to that particular subject, the tax rate, that we hear from them first before we set the tax rate. Thereafter, the board may vote on it. You want me to summarize where we are so far?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be fantastic.
We met a couple weeks ago to look at the posting of this to make sure that whatever rate we posted would be as high or higher than the rate that was adopted. That's a requirement for the notice. What the administration is recommending is that we keep the overall tax rate, the total, but that we switch 2 pennies in maintenance and operation, go up by 2 pennies, and go down by 2 pennies on the INS rate. The reason we are recommending this is that it brings more money to the district from the state, not money from our local taxpayers, but money from the state. And so it's to the tune of about $5.5 million by going up maintenance and operations by 2 pennies. We can go down 2 cents in INS because we've accumulated about $1 million in savings on past bond project from 2006, and we have interest accumulated from the funds we've received from bond proceeds. So that can substitute for the 2 pennies of INS. So, and then the final reason we can do this is that in the aftermath of a natural disaster, there's a provision within Texas law that allows you for 1 year to do this kind of maneuver or switch without having to take further steps such as a tax ratification election. Now, you know, I want to say that this is a 1-year measure, and that we still, as you know from the June board meeting, we were at that time about $8 million deficit that we would have to take out of fund balance. This would reduce that with the $5.5 million that the state provides. And then we're also looking, I think I wrote to you the other day that our good people here, including Yvette there in the audience, and Georgiani and another Donna Tate, secured a little over $1 million in grants associated with Hurricane Harvey. That will also help, and that was unanticipated until now. So anyway, I'm getting a little off the subject. That my recommendation is that we set the same overall tax rate as we have for as long as I've been here, but that we go up by 2 cents in M&O and down by 2 cents in INS. Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions from me?
Questions? None? All right.
For any member of the public that would like
Is
to.
there any member of the public that would like to address the board? Anyone from the public?
Then you can declare the hearing closed and then
It's closed.
seek a motion.
I seek a motion from the board.
I'll make the motion. I will say before I make the motion, though, publicly, it is as we approve a tax rate, disappointing to see that as our local appraisals and local revenues increase, that our state funding continues to decrease. And you know, again, as we continue to pay more taxes locally, we continue to receive less funding. And until the state legislature decides that they're going to address this issue, you know, we're going to continue to, you'll see more taxes on our citizens. So with that, I'll make the motion
I just
that
want
we,
to add on to that briefly before the motion. That he's absolutely right. As the tax, as the local values increase, the local fundings increase, the state funding decreases at a disproportionate value. So we're getting less money than we are gaining, which is why we have accrued a lot of problems this year.
Yes.
I just want to add that.
with that, I'll make the motion that we approve the tax rate as recommended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion.
Yeah. And,
The whole
well,
motion?
just let me clarify that basically what you're passing is the resolution that's in the board packet.
Correct.
On page 8 of that board
So,
packet.
can you read the whole motion, Mr. Murphy?
Which,
Page
Page
6,
six.
Sean?
oops.
Eight.
I move that the property tax rate is set at the rates prescribed by the presented resolution.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion made by Mr. Murphy and a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I shall call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay, the motion carries 7-4 and 0 against. All right, you guys want to go to consent?
Consent.
Consent agenda? Do I have a motion?
Can't get back to it. I'll make a motion to approve consent as presented.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion made by Mr. Berry and a second by Mr. Floyd. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries 7-4 and 0 against.
Madam President, if we can go into a couple, one or two quick items
Okay.
in the regular agenda. The first one is consider approval of naming HGAC Assembly Representative and Alternate.
Yes.
Our last two, this past year has been Trustee Murphy and Trustee Berry. And basically, they're asking us to designate again a primary and an alternate for membership on that Houston Galveston Area Council.
You don't mind doing it? I don't mind either, so.
When are those meetings held?
Would be the alternate again?
There's the first one I think is a,
Are they quarterly or monthly? Do we know?
You actually don't even attend unless you're appointed
to the board,
to the actual board.
right? So they have a meeting and it has a telephone conference to select the actual board, right?
Yeah, so this appoints you, then they have a conference, and then they'll select you as either the representative who's on the HGAC board or the alternate, in case the member can't attend, then you can. Typically on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock.
Do you want to do it again?
If somebody wants to do it, you want to do it?
That's why I was asking about timing. That's a kind of tough time for
Okay.
childcare coverage.
Jeff, are you okay to be the alternate still?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Fine, not to
So who was the original?
Murphy was the representative, and then the alternate was Jeff.
Maybe. Okay.
I move that the board selects Trustee Murphy as a representative to the HGAC and Trustee Barry as an alternate for 2019.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion made by Mr. Floyd and a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion?
I actually have some additional questions. And not that it's specific to the HGAC, but it brings up some questions about, like we have appointees to different boards and different groups. What's the mechanism for kind of reporting back once you're appointed to an outside on behalf of the school board in general? For example, like this would be one, the Education Foundation, the Bond Oversight Committee. What's the mechanism for those appointees, like kind of circling back and filling everybody else in?
I don't think we have an official mechanism,
They
but
don't.
if whoever attends a meeting can certainly just either type up notes or request an item to
Send it.
fill the board in. I don't know that it needs to be any more.
When we did board member activities, we announced it during board
You
member,
can do that.
board member activities.
Yeah.
Are there minutes typically emailed out to you guys as appointees of those groups? Like the bond oversight meeting that happened recently? Were you included in any?
I was, because I'm an alternate on that committee.
Would it be possible for you guys to forward those minutes back? I mean, that would be something, then you don't have to do a whole lot, but it gives us information back on your,
I would
like,
even,
whatever's going on with Education Foundation's a good one, because that
I can
keeps
give,
us,
I can give you that.
I
I
helping
was
to
actually gonna
advertise their needs.
Tell you a
and
little
all
about
those.
the Education Foundation, what they're doing right now.
I would even say to remove board member activities and just replace it with committee activities or something like that.
Updates or something like
Yeah, committee
do that.
updates or something along those lines. I mean,
that. Updates on,
It's a good idea.
Great idea. Way to go, Mr. Barry.
of 'em.
Ooh, you're on fire. Committee updates instead.
Chocolate cake.
Mhm.
It was the chocolate cake. It was. All right. Okay, so I had the motion,
Motion's a second.
right, and a second.
Got a vote?
Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All right.
Congratulations,
The
guys.
motion carries 7-4 and 0 against.
Job,
Thanks
Dave.
again for representing us.
Congratulations, Jeff, Sean.
All right.
And I think
Well
we're ready for
deserved.
recognition, man.
Oh, good. Yeah. Our favorite time of the board meeting, board recognition.
We have recognition.
all right.
Good evening. Pearland ISD is home to some of the most talented students in Texas, and now we'd love to recognize our students and our staff for their achievements, along with our community partners for their generosity. Every year, our administration selects a student as the featured artist for our district employee birthday card. The 2018-19 artist is Sabolatura's Chloe Sheffield, who is now a 7th grader at Pearland Junior High West. Chloe's Sabolatura art teacher is Miss Montilla, and they are both here this evening. Congratulations, Chloe. Next, we'd like to recognize the achievements of Pearland ISD's business office, who recently was awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association and the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Association of School Business Officials International. The Certificate of Excellence from both organizations represents the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and the attainment of each one alone reflects a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. This is the first year Pearland ISD has been awarded these notable achievements. In addition, the district received the award for the popular annual financial reporting from GFOA for the preparation of its first annual financial report summary, which extracts information from the comprehensive annual financial report and presents it in a way that's accessible and easily understandable for the general public and other interested parties without a background in public finance. These awards are acknowledgments of the district's ongoing efforts to achieve excellence in financial reporting and increase financial transparency. With us this evening, representing the business office, is our Chief Financial Officer, Georgianne Carter. Our Director of Accounting, Leslie Squares. And Director of Yvette, Director of Business Overview. What's it called? What's it called, Yvette? There you go. That's the most important one. That's why I saved her for last. Director of Budget Compliance, Yvette Rogers. And then also, if the rest of the business office who is here would please stand so we can recognize you as well. Now we'd like to recognize our community partners for their generosity. Each year, the Vic Coppinger Family YMCA hosts one of the largest area school supply drives, Operation Backpack. Through the 14th annual YMCA Operation Backpack, Vic Coppinger Family YMCA donated over 1,000 backpacks and 8,000 school supplies for Pearland ISD students who needed that extra help to start the 2018-19 school year. We're extremely grateful to this community partner for this monumental yearly undertaking. At this time, we'd like to recognize YMCA representatives Samuel Gray and Paige Zembransky. Thank you so much. Next, we'd like to recognize our community partner, Texas First Bank. This year, the bank collected and donated over $1,500 worth of school supplies and backpacks for our students. Representing the bank this evening are Carmen Shepard, the Pearland Banking Center Manager, Renee Rockers, and Cynthia Rodriguez. Now we'd like to recognize First United Methodist Church. This year, they held a school supply drive benefiting 4 of our campuses and donating over $5,000 worth of supplies to those 4 campuses. Here with us tonight, representing the First United Methodist Church, are Dr. Reverend Keith Whitaker, Rahel Lee Yu, Judy Poston, and Teresa Kafer. Thank you so much. Thank y'all. Finally, earlier this school year, the Davis Days Foundation presented 2 Pearland ISD departments with checks to support their missions. First, a check was given to our food service department to pay off all remaining unpaid balances from last school year, giving all students a clean slate this year. Next, a check was presented to the outreach department in order to help them purchase items for at-risk and homeless students to better equip them for success. Representing the Davis Days Foundation this evening are John Davis, the founder, and Kathy Garcia Vasquez. That concludes recognition. Let's give everyone another hand.
Back at it.
This one? Yep. Okay.
Madam President, the next item here is to consider to approve the annual interlocal agreement with the City of Pearland for school resource officers. I understand we have both Chief Spires and Assistant Chief Randall here as well, Chad Randall. We have been working on this contract, principally Nan Weimer, our Deputy Superintendent, since I think about February. I think Chad and Randall and Nan have done most of the heavy lifting on this. And basically, we are recommending approval of the contract in your packet. The total amount of the expense for this year is $1,050,000. That is an increase over last year in recognition that costs have gone up, but also that to give a fair ratio of the relative costs for the police and for the school district. I'll be glad to answer questions, but also the chief and the assistant chief are here, and Ms. Weimer can also help as needed. She is here, isn't she? Oh, she is at Turner and is trying to make it, and I told her, don't worry, it won't be any earlier than 6:30. So,
So it's a,
She's got 3 minutes.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Dr. Kelly, I would like to personally thank Chief Spires and Assistant Chief Randall. After Santa Fe last year, well, actually for two things. First of all, I got great feedback from the officers being on campuses, so I appreciate you doing that. The other thing I appreciate that probably goes unnoticed is that the assignment of the police officers in the school zones in the mornings and the afternoons. Again, those guys are on patrol, and
Yes.
but they're there monitoring those school zones. It shows a presence, and it also keeps people from, zooming in and out of those school zones. So I appreciate Chief Spires, your guys' directive on that. So
yeah.
the only question I do have related to the contract would be the potential variable cost under paragraph 5 on page 33. Is our cap at $1,050,000, and are we responsible if there are variable costs?
Well, we have negotiated back and forth on this. We've essentially left it that if there are costs above that level, that both parties need to sit down and agree to it or negotiate it. These things would include, I wish Nan was here because she's a little bit more knowledgeable about this than I am. Only overtime, which is time and a half for any officers in excess of 40 hours on a week. And we haven't, from what I understand, we haven't had much of a pattern of overtime in past years, but it is a possibility.
Sure. Okay.
That's the only variable?
Yes.
The other
Yeah, I
question?
forgot. Georgiani was in the middle of this also, so she can help.
Any
That's the
other
only question I have.
else?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Trustees approves the interlocal agreement with the City of Pearland to provide school resource officers for the district during the school calendar year period of August 13th, 2018 through May 30th of 2019.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Botkin and a second by Mr. Berry. Any further discussion?
I'd like to say something.
Okay.
To the school resource officers and to the police department, I've seen a lot of different, situations, districts setting up. They have their own, police departments. They have their school resource officers through the county, things like that. I've seen a lot of them around the state, and I studied a lot of them. We, by far, I believe we have the best. Our school resource officers are
awesome.
very well in tune with our campuses. That's a testament to the department and a testament to their passion of wanting our community to be the best. I also a testament to Sergeant Beavers and his team. He's always constantly on top of stuff. So, you know, we're very fortunate to have that agreement with, and that community support, everybody coming together to help. It takes a village to raise kids, right? So, and y'all's philosophy on that is duly noted. And we appreciate it.
Yeah, Madam President, I'd like to add, after Santa Fe of last year, I think there was either 2 weeks or 3 weeks left of school, and the police department basically placed an officer full-time at all 23 of our campuses, including the 3 campuses that are not even within the Pearland ISD city boundaries. And I had to go there, I think it was passing out Teacher of the Year checks or something. So I got to see every campus where this was, and was nothing more comforting to the staff and the faculty and the parents than to see that officer there. So I was just very grateful for that. They can't do that all year, obviously. They're stretched way too thin for that, but we just appreciated it during that really difficult time. So.
If I may, I kind of have a question in that regard, but I'd like to piggyback on the comments that everyone else has made about the gratefulness that I have for Pearland PD in particular. I don't think it's any surprise that my family is a very strong supporter of a Pearland Police Department. We try to get to every event that they have to show our appreciation to the officers and putting them in the front line and in harm's way every day. And there's nothing more, no words that I can express my gratefulness enough about feeling safe in our city, and it's because of you guys and your team, and I appreciate that very much. Regarding the piece about having representation at the schools, I'm sure you guys have read Governor Abbott's release about safety and security. One of the things that he recommended was building relationships with our local police departments in an effort to have more visibility in our schools. I know that there's been talk on our side, but I wonder just from your side, do you guys have any points of creativity about how that we could make that happen, although it's apart from the SRO contract?
Thank you. Thank you for all the comments and compliments you've been giving us. I really appreciate that. First thing I want to say is we don't normally dress like this. I know people are kind of looking at us. We had a funeral today for a Pearland firefighter, Greg Bouchig, and he lost his battle with cancer, so we attended that today, and we're still wearing the same uniform. So we don't normally dress up this like this.
It's effective, though, I think.
You definitely feel your presence.
I absolutely concur with your comments about our program. I've been with the department for 29 years, so I watched this program from the beginning and watched it grow. And from the time we had one SRO in the school until what we have today, and I can tell you they are absolutely some of the best trained and dedicated officers you're going to find. But on top of that, they take ownership of their school, and they take ownership of those kids, and they care about those kids just like they're their own kids. And I think that's what makes this program more successful than most. It's not just a job they go to every day. They absolutely care about these kids, and I know what they will do to protect them. So I'm very proud of the program. We definitely want to keep this relationship going. I do want to thank Chief Randall and Ms. Weimer for powering through this contract. It was a little more difficult this year than most, but we got through it. I knew we would, and we'll get through next year also. And now I forgot what your question was. No, I'm kidding. I think I remember.
Okay.
As far as the relationship goes, we still, like you said, you mentioned before, we have a standing order for our officers to be in the school zones. If they're not on a call, we want them in the school zone in the morning and in the evenings, or in the afternoons. Also, we highly encourage them to go visit the schools, the officers on the street to visit them. Anytime during the day, go have lunch. A lot of times they'll go have lunch with their children, so they'll be in there in uniform for that. We've made a couple other suggestions as far as maybe hire, I know I would love to see an officer at every school, but that's not possible right now. But if there are some schools that you want to see one at more often, you can always hire as an off-duty, like an extra job basis, like you do for games and things like that. We've made that offer also, and we're open to other suggestions. We do encourage them to stick around the schools, and if there's ever a threat or things that we find out about, we bring all our resources in to help with that. It's not just on the SRO's back. And also, and you mentioned Sergeant Beavers also, absolute gem. Love Andy Beavers. I've worked with Andy Beavers on night shift 25 years ago. He's a great guy, and he's definitely part of this program. And that is not a 8 to 5 job for Andy Beavers. Y'all know that. He gets calls all day, all night, and all summer. So he's definitely dedicated to the program. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but we try to stay in tune with what's going on and get our officers involved as much as we can with the SROs. They train the SRO. This is one of our best ones right over there, Michael Paul. I beat him in basketball once. I'm not sure if y'all know that. I'm absolutely lying. But yeah, and we're open to suggestions on how else we can help you.
There were some things in that report about like technology hotspots and those kinds of things. Would you guys be open to that if that was a partnership that we could?
I think we've talked a little bit about that, making it available, hotspots at your school. So all our officers have body cams, and they have cameras in their car, and they have to get these Wi-Fi hotspots in order to upload all that information and get it back to our department. Right now, there's only a few places, obviously at the police department and a couple other places in town they can do that. If we can make that available at the schools, they can definitely park at the schools and do the reports, and those videos can be uploaded at the same time.
Mr. Barté may be able to comment on that. I know he's been working with the PD on that issue.
One of the things that we've been working with the PD and their technology department is we're creating their own wireless network that will read into our schools. And when they pull up to a school, they'll be able to grab that. No one else will be able to see it but their equipment, and they'll be able to do whatever they need to do through our network.
Awesome. So that's something you guys will encourage your officers to take advantage of as well. Okay.
It'll be seamless to them. As soon as they get within distance, it'll grab it and show up on their devices.
How far away are we from that technology?
We'll start rolling that out probably in December, January.
Okay, good news. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we're just waiting on a specific access point to be available in December.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess the other question I have, maybe for Dr. Kelly, do the SROs, and maybe, I don't know for who, but do the SROs meet regularly, like as a roundup to kind of share stories or what's working or what's not for each school? Or I know schools are a bit different in their cultures and things, so that.
Yeah, you mean, do they meet together as just a group of SROs? I don't know. I'd have to ask Sergeant Beavers or Chief.
Me.
Yeah.
They used to, last year they did it once a week, and we changed that a little bit because we wanted the officers in the schools. They were all meeting at the PD at the same time, the same place every week. We didn't want anybody to pick up on that habit.
Right.
And we wanted to keep the officers in the school, so we kind of stopped their roll calls, and I'm not sure if they pick it up somewhere. Michael, can you answer that question? Okay. So
So-
they communicate a lot, but not
I-
all at once.
I guess, is there any like formal setting at which school district administration is looped into those meetings or conversations?
I believe somebody from the school district was at those meetings every week, right? Okay. We can definitely set something like that up with, at least with Andy.
Well,
So
I
Andy's
you know, I was
in
going to say
contact.
that Sergeant Beavers meets with me all the time
Yeah.
and with others. He is very good about that. And so we see him in the ESC all the time, meeting with different people, Mr. Berger, myself, and other folks. I think communication there is excellent.
Okay, great.
We've really tried to make it a point to keep the officers in the schools, even if they have evidence or something they need to get back to the PD. We try to let Andy take care of that, or Courier or something like that, just to keep them in this. We don't want something to happen and us to have to explain why there was an SRO gone for that
Right.
15 minutes that we really needed them there.
Sure, sure. I guess the main question I have is what the feedback loop is. If officers who are trained professionals in keeping our kids safe have ideas, is there a mechanism at which they can get that information back to us so that they can, because I've heard a lot of rumblings and word on the street or whatever about There are some ideas that are had, and there's not a continuous communication stream at which those ideas can be kind of filtered over, and a body of two people, like the two different departments, can get together to share those things. And I didn't know where the hiccup was with that, so I just wanted to
Well,
make sure that.
I don't know if there is a hiccup, but Sergeant Beavers is, for example, he is at the monthly principals directors meeting, and he usually spends some time talking to all the principals and directors about anything that he wants us to do or wants us to consider.
Okay, great. So, I mean, as always, there are some rumblings that don't always have factual base. So I acknowledge that completely, but sometimes they need to be addressed just to clear that up. So I appreciate both of you.
I'd also like to say that the SROs train together in the summer. They go to conferences together. When they do their firearms training, they do it together. So they're a pretty close-knit, tight group, and I think they work very well together.
One of the things I appreciate most about not just our SROs, but the SRO programs in general, is that they have that strong relationship and that strong character, bringing it into the schools, and they're building relationships with kids. So they can diffuse situations long before they get to a point, in most circumstances, and I would hope that there's more that we don't know about that could occur because of their efforts and effect. And so I appreciate everything that you guys are doing in our schools, and appreciate this contract that you guys have worked on. So thank you to both administration and the Pearland PD.
Thank you so much.
And Chief Spires, I'd like to say a couple things too. Is I know that we were somewhat far apart when y'all started initially having these conversations. There were some much higher numbers floated out there, and I really appreciate the work that you guys have done to kind of shrink that void, so to speak. And I think, working towards getting more SROs in our schools are something that I want. I'd love to have one at every campus.
I second
And
that.
you guys do an amazing job, and I'm grateful for everything that you guys do. So thanks a bunch.
Thank you. And I concur, and I'm a little prejudiced for my guys. I feel like you got the best guys to do this job. And like I said, they train really hard. And we try to make sure that their training is up to date as you can get with the active shooter response. We have some trainers at the police department that travel across the country teaching these classes. So they teach it to the SROs, and they also teach it to the responding officers who are going to be the first ones there to help them. So everybody working together, I think, makes it a lot safer school. I definitely want to make sure that the most important thing we need to think about here is the safety of the kids. And I think our guys are the best qualified to do that, so we're going to work very hard to make sure that stays the course.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Any further comments, questions? Okay. Hearing none, I shall call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay. Wait a second.
We have a motion.
There wasn't a motion.
Yeah, there was.
There was a motion and a
Motion and a
Who
second.
made the motion?
I made the motion and it was a second.
Lance. Okay, that's right.
Hockenberry.
And then okay.
As presented?
Yes.
I second it.
And you seconded it. I got it. I didn't write it down. I apologize.
We'll
Okay.
flip it back.
And I looked away. We voted?
We got it.
Yes,
Don't worry about
yes,
it.
the
All right.
motion
Good.
carried 7-4 and 0 against.
It's good.
Yeah, I didn't write, you typically write down who the motion was.
All
I
done,
did
all
not write
done.
that one.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. All right, Dr. Kelly?
Yes, Madam President, our next two items are related to the rig. And in the first one,
Pearland High School, right?
yes, Pearland High School. The first one relates to the expanded scope for the press box in terms of ratifying the amount of money that the board previously was briefed on and said proceed with, the expanded press box. So we can talk about that. And then the second issue is the facade. And on that particular issue, the board said come back to us with further designs and prices, and we'll make a decision on that. We also have Dina Hanks is here and able to speak about the Bond Oversight Committee. I think there's other members of that committee here also. And so you may at some point want on this item or the next item to hear from her. And
Maybe we should do it first.
Yeah.
To get their perspective
that'd be great.
before we endeavor into this conversation.
Good evening, Board. If I could just say that all our discussions with you on the press box expansion and the facade for the homeside visitors We have briefed the Oversight Committee. Everything you'll see tonight, they've already been briefed. They were briefed last week. So Dina Hanks, on behalf of that committee, is going to share some of the thoughts of that committee.
Very good.
Thank you. School Board Trustees, good evening. The following statement I am about to share is given unanimously by the citizens of the Bond Oversight Committee. They asked me to speak on the committee's behalf tonight. To remind everyone and to share with those who may not know, the Long Range Planning Committee was comprised of 46 citizens who represented various entities spanning the entire school district. The Bond Oversight Committee was suggested by members of that Long Range Planning Committee. As presented at over 60 presentations to the public, here is the purpose and the description of the Bond Oversight Committee. Keeping the promise to taxpayers, to make sure bond projects follow the program approved by the voters. The committee would be made up of 12 to 15 members who meet quarterly. The committee members would be approved by the school board. The Bond Oversight Committee will ensure that bond proceeds are spent appropriately and that projects are on schedule and within budget. To the two issues tonight. The Bond Oversight Committee cannot, in good conscience, support the expanded press box or the facade at the rig. Neither of these items were in the original scope presented to the voters and in fact goes against what was told to the public to earn their vote. Two ideals were shared during the campaign. One, all 35 projects on the list would be completed before any additional projects are to be entertained by the school board. And two, should all of those 35 projects be completed, the bonds would possibly not be sold to lessen the debt incurred. Unfortunately, this has not been the case. We are not a year yet into construction, and the expanded press box and the facade are being considered. In fact, the renovated press box was number 34 out of the 35 projects when the projects were ranked by the Long Range Planning Committee. Even though the renovated press box was at the bottom of the list, it has now been expanded with an additional $3.1 million cost. Should the addition of the $5.7 million facade happen, this would leave a very small cushion of roughly $6 million for any potential items needed in the future. With an already strapped budget, we ask that you think beyond the immediate. The Long Range Planning Committee developed 10 guiding principles to help steer our decisions. Included in that list was the following and most important. This is a quote, "First and foremost, Pearland facilities must provide a safe and secure learning experience for all students and staff." Should you approve tonight, the expanded press box will be completed before many other projects which were originally sold to the voters. This includes the Shady Crest Elementary Security Vestibule, which is included in the remaining Package E that has not yet even been bid out. Both the expanded press box and the facade were not on the original list of projects presented to the voters. As good stewards of our commitment to this committee, to the Long Range Planning Committee, and to the Pearland ISD taxpayers, it is our position that additional spending beyond the original approved bond project scope should not happen until all pledged projects are completed to ensure adequate funding for those already approved by the voters. Thank you.
Okay, board? Comments, questions?
One
was-
detail I would mention about the press box. I went back and looked to make sure my memory was right about this. It does say in the PowerPoint expanded press box. What the point that I think Dina and the committee are making is that when it was priced out, it was a considerably lower price within all of those calculations than the price that you first had estimated at that meeting where we approved its expansion.
So now it's even more than what we we
Well,
anticipated?
no, it's
it's
the
an
amount that
expansion
when you all approved the bigger expansion of the press box, I think that was in March, you were given a price that was estimated, and it has come within that price. But as Dina is pointing out, it is beyond the original budget figures from way back when that we anticipated for the rig. Is that a good way of?
Yes,
Putting it.
so there was the expanded press box, which was in the original scope.
Right.
And then there was the
Expanded.
mega expansion, I don't know, expansion that was approved in March.
Right.
You have two different terms for it, don't you? I thought y'all did.
I think the original
I mean,
budget
there-
was 3.1 or 3.2 just to do
The
renovations, correct?
Yeah, the bond scope and then the expanded press box. So
Dr. Kelly,
that's what we are, of course, I mean, what was originally told to the voters was a renovated press box, not the expanded,
Just to
with the
clarify,
additional money. I'm sorry.
Dr. Kelly, I'm sorry, excuse me. That project with the expanded press box has already been approved and is going through. correct?
It is approved, but tonight, it was approved at that March meeting, but tonight you would have to approve to have it go forward, the GMP, the
Sure.
guaranteed maximum
So there-
price.
there's
So is there a way to go and approve the original expanded, the original scope without approving the expanded?
I don't see
So,
why not.
I mean, well,
Well, we could
Well,
just not accept the GMP.
well,
But then that,
Do we owe money then
that
to
would
the-
mean no
to Stewart
expansion,
Builders?
right?
so here's
We
the.
just go
Well,
back.
the
you know,
problem is that you have the GMP you have for the rig project is all lumped together. There's no
Yeah.
breakout of what the lighting, the all the different elements cost. So within that 8 million in the GMP, there is the press box, which is its own item. And I'm not sure what that cost is, but the total GMP on this proposal is 8 million. But that
It's the
includes
entire-
the
whole rig.
the additional stands and everything
So
else.
you would have to come back with a different GMP.
So
Do you know what can I ask what the breakout is of that press box beyond of that 8
The-
million? What is just the press box?
The entire press box, the expanded portion is 3.1 million over the original scope. Now, the original.
Do you have a
scope
total number, Mr.
was
Tillis?
approximately 3 million. I think we're at about $6 million for the entire press box renovation. Now, I would say this, though, 6 months ago, when you approved the expanded press box, that's what we're bringing to you. We designed that and we bid that out. If you were to go back to the original, we don't have that design, we don't have that bid out. It would cause us to have to restart the process.
So I guess my question still is, of the 8 million that is the GMP, maybe Stewart Builders, how much of that 8 million is just the expanded press box?
About 6 million.
The press box is 6 million. The expanded press box is 3.1 million of that. So it's about 3 million for the original bond scope. And then when you expanded it, that was another, we said it was going to be from 2.8 to 3.4. It turned out to be $3.1 million to make it larger than the original plan.
So 3 million, 3.1 million.
$3.1 million.
Wait,
Or
okay,
the-
so of the 8.167, you're saying only 3 million is, you're saying
Six-
6.2,
6
6.1?
million. $6 million for the entire press box renovation.
But the
So-
expanded version is $3 million more than the original.
Correct.
scope.
But I'm talking about on page 38, which is the guaranteed maximum price, 8.167264. Of that price, 6.1 is what the cost of
Just the
the
press box.
of the press box.
That's correct.
Right. As the version is.
And the 2
presented to
million
us
is
right
for the remaining items, like the
For
track
the-
and all this other
For
stuff.
the,
The
additional
lights,
3,000
lights. No.
seating, the
New sound
sound.
system.
Well, the track was separate, right?
The concession.
Track was separate.
Just the concession stand, the locker rooms, the additional 3,000 seating for the visitor side, and the sound.
So are we
Parking
you
lot.
mentioned concessions. Are we redoing the home side, all the concession stands and the
There's some,
restrooms?
renovations planned in those
Okay.
concession stands, yes.
I guess just to finish my statement, what Dina is saying is that, so of this 8,167,000, the original bond, what the voters approved was 3.1, 3.2, and we've increased that to 6.1.
Yes.
Right, correct, Dina?
Yes.
For the stand, for the.
But as I
For
remember,
the expanded,
when
for
we
the
had that
press box.
conversation,
And just to clarify, it's the entire bond oversight committee that's saying this,
Right.
not just me.
Right, sure.
You are the spokesperson.
Guys, can we let,
Yeah, it's not only Dina.
Yeah, I
can we
think-
let Sean finish his comment? I want to hear where he's going with his statement.
No, I just want to clarify the numbers because, when Dr. Kelly originally sent this out, and just to be clear, I voted against, I supported what the voters wanted, which was $3.2 million, which was approved in the bond. I supported that. We went beyond that, and there are board members that voted to increase that to $6 million. It passed 5-2,
Right.
and that's where we are, right?
Right.
So we gave direction to the
voted against it,
architect. It passed 5-2 that we wanted to see an increased press box, and the number would be 5 to 6 million. So that's how we got here because we approved the schematics
Correct.
to increase it. Okay. Now where we are is we've got costs back from Stewart Builders of what the actual guaranteed maximum price will be, and that's what we're approving tonight. So when I looked at this 8.1, I was under the impression that this was the press box. Dr. Kelly clarified to me via email that this included all the projects.
All the rig.
So to Charles's point, my point is that I didn't see in this agenda packet, for tonight and to the public, what the actual breakout was
Right.
of the press box versus what the total project cost was.
Right.
So, again, in the beginning, I supported the $3 million. Again, I was all for the $3 million, but when it went to $6 million to do the press box, I voted against it, and that's still where I'm at. So that's where I'm going with that, Charles. I would have liked to seen the complete breakout of, what the separate cost was, but I guarantee, I mean, I understand it's all under one GMP, and that's how we normally approve things. So.
And to clear it up, the GMP can be declined by the board,
Right.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's a complete option. So
But to my understanding, if we decline all of this, then we're declining all bits of the GMP, not
Then
just
they have
the
to go back.
declining
They,
of the.
they
Well,
have
they
to go
have to
back.
go
We just repackage it.
right. But here's the thing about the way that
But the thing is that it was voted for, and board members gave direction to the architect to
go
do
do
this.
it.
I mean, this was why it was voted on, and I'm not saying it can't go either way,
Right.
but just to clarify what previously happened,
Right.
is it was voted, and we gave by that vote direction to PBK to draw this, and then they went to the builder and had them build this, and we're talking about the press box, not
right. So
anything else at this point.
if we're looking at the. I was one of the ones who voted for the expanded press box, and for the architect and the contractor to go out and give us a actual firm price on the facade, right? I was very clear that I was on the fence about the facade when we talked about it in May or whenever it was. But I think what I have to say to Mrs. Hanks and to the members of the Long Range Committee is that I go beyond understanding and incorporating what you all are saying into my decision making, right? So thank you very much for being so frank and candid about what you had to say. One thing I'll point out is that it is not inherently wrong for the board to go above and beyond bond scope on projects. There have been projects that have gone above and beyond bond scope because of one reason or another, right? Pearland High School went above and beyond bond scope. We had some areas that needed to be added, missed, whatever it was, right? So I just want to make it clear that I don't think I did anything actually wrong or illegal or immoral by saying that, yes, let's go look at something different. One of the reasons I said let's go look at something different is because I don't think the bond scope, and granted, I didn't have my hands in that, I don't know that the bond scope at the stadium went far enough in the first place, right? And that's why I was inclined to look at the expansions. So at this point, what I'm thinking is that we have a project in front of us in the agenda that I think is going to be a great amenity for the community. And we have, and you divide it up, we've got pushback and unreadiness and, we're not real certain about everything that's here in the packet tonight, right? So my thought is, why don't we pull the project completely? Go back to the drawing board, figure something out that we can all agree on, and wait until we get the rest of the bond program built. The point is that we know we've got a $6 million cushion now. The statement was correct saying that we have the elementary schools to do. We don't know what that's going to come up with, and so maybe if we wait, we have a better idea of what actually can happen at the stadium. Some of my thoughts.
I was under the impression there was a timing issue with the rig projects.
Well, it's after the football season is when it starts, right? So
Well,
In order to get it
let's
ready for
be
next
clear.
football season.
Let's be clear that if we do delay, then the project is just going to be delayed, right? But the board has that authority.
Right.
We do not have to build
Does that
this.
delay all
Right.
the Pearland
Essentially,
projects?
I mean, we wanted to
yeah.
start this project after football
After
season.
football
so
season, right?
I think we would say we're going to delay it a year.
Yes.
Is what we're talking about.
Yes.
And then I would also qualify that we have a $12.4 million additional funds right now with the elementary projects remaining, and that includes if you were to approve the expanded press box of $3.1 million.
Okay, I
yeah, but
misunderstood that in the.
I'm opposed
Not
to
the facade.
looking at new ventures on this bond project just because we have mystical funds available. So, I was opposed to the original proposal for the expanded press box, and for that very reason, I would have come back. I would have much rather gone back and said, you know what? If we want to expand the press box, I would also like to see a capacity of 1,500 students at Turner, but we're not going to have that because we have an artificial, ceiling that we impose over there. So I would much prefer something like that than expanding the press box. I was fine with the current scope, and which was, granted, almost double the size of the existing press box, by the way. I was fine with that.
Yeah.
The facade, maybe not so much. But that could have been easily done at the end when all the other projects were done. So,
Mr.
Mr.
Floyd,
Tillis, could you?
if we just go back to the original bond scope, the way it was presented, I think that's much easier than trying to go back and
Well,
reinvent the
hang
wheel
on.
and
Let me
come
add
up with a
something
new
there.
solution.
I just want to get a clarification on the amount of of our underrun so far. And on page 40, the underrun is shown as 12.4 million, right? And if I'm looking at the item B, it says includes the rig project, but not the facade. And we
So-
have an overage of 6.3 at Pearland. So do I add another 6?
yes.
So right now, if you were to approve the expansion of the press box, that would get you to 12.4. If you
Okay.
decided to approve the facade, then you would subtract about 5.5 million from that 12.4. So
Okay, and that's where I got the
right,
6 million
so
from.
the
So
12, if
okay,
you don't approve the expanded press box, you're going to pick up another $3 million, and then
Okay.
it'd go to 15 million and something.
okay. Excuse me.
But
Let me,
Mr.
Charles, let me combine what you've said with what Jeff said with what Dina said. If we were to delay the project, Dina points out that we haven't done design on the elementary project, and so we're looking at the fall of 2020 when the last part of this is done. So if we were to put this at the end, then we're looking at what I guess no sooner than fall of 2020 is when we would do whatever it is that we were going to do with the rig.
Mr. Floyd had,
Yeah, no, I just wanted to work through kind of what I was thinking. And I think Mr. Gooden makes a great point about waiting. I'm not 100% sold on that, but essentially, when we had this first conversation, and before I begin that, I want to thank the Oversight Committee. I appreciate your work. I also subscribe to what Mr. Gooden said, Trustee Gooden, about the board being able to be flexible with the parameters that were set by the voters, especially considering not only are we on schedule, but we're under budget, considerably under budget. The idea that we have to spend money exactly how the ballot was set would mean that of the $40 million that we were supposed to spend at Dawson, the $30 million that we did spend at Dawson, the 10.8 that we saved would theoretically have to be spent at Dawson, right? The fact that we're able to move those funds around is a testament to the fact that we can expand in areas where we think we have to. The argument that we had about the press box was that the bond scope that was voted upon was not good enough. And so why would we build a press box that we're going to have to expand 2-3 years from now? Why not just get it done in the most efficient, cost-effective way possible? And to the statement, I agree actually with most of it. But the point about, holding the elementary school security over our heads in that way, I don't find that to be appropriate, especially because, first of all, they're not mutually exclusive, right? We have 12.4 in savings. We could do everything we're doing. The bond folks have done a phenomenal job, not just running under budget on most of the projects. Only Pearland has gone over from what I see here. And so I have confidence in the work that they've done so far. A part of Project F has also gone over, as well as C. But on the whole, we are saving money in a way that I think the voters of Pearland would expect us to, and to not do the projects in a way that provides us the ability to look into the future and say, look, we're not going to do I'm trying to find an appropriate way of saying this. We're not going to do a slacked off job on this press box by just doing bond scope. But instead, we're going to say we have needs. There are necessities we have to have. Otherwise, this is going to be a burden the citizens apparently are going to have to do in the next bond. So we have the funds to do it now. I think I'm not 100%, I think we could wait. I think that might be a solution. I'm not sold on the facade. I think that might be extra. But I was told, and there was consensus amongst at least 5 of us, that the press box would not be appropriate. It would be crammed in its original bond scope. And so I don't think we should build something that we're not going to be proud of.
Well, let me add to that real quick. You mentioned that we had $12 million left over.
Yeah.
We don't have to sell those bonds.
Sure.
So that's not
that's definitely an
actual
option.
money that we have. That's money that we
That the voters gave
allocated
us,
towards
right.
the sale of bonds.
So, but yeah, then,
So-
I mean, if we could give all 12.4 back, that's definitely what the bond committee
Or
does.
just never get it.
Sure.
Because this number is not gotten yet.
Right.
Let's
We could
be-
not sell those bonds, but
We've not received that money.
I mean, that's definitely not. I mean, if you want to do that, but then the problem is you're going to have a press box that's too crammed. I mean, we have.
That's the question that I have, is
That's not
what's the
true.
educational use of the press box? What student, how is that going to expand the educational opportunities for students outside of the few theater and visual arts teams that might be up there at any given time?
That'd be a question for the extracurricular activities people. Are they here?
I don't know, are they?
Part of.
I completely understand that point, but I don't think when you look at what the difference is between the bond scope and the expanded scope that was approved, the functional spaces are larger, so the people that are there have more space to work in, and then there was the addition of a community room, right? And I know that was a point of discussion as well. When you look at that, and when you look at what's being built around us, I really think that's the level we need to shoot at, right? Not shoot at, but that's the level of amenity that we need to look at building, right? Which is why I'm comfortable with saying the committee has given us their input. I think the scope is great where it is, right? But we need to get to a point where we can agree on that, and perhaps even take the renovations even further in some of the other spaces. Because when I asked about what the renovation was going to be at the and again, we have a branding problem, right? That's always going to be the rig because it's on the campus of Pearland High School, right? So how do we, the facade did give us some branding opportunities for, kind of to bring the Dawson flavor in on it. But, I just really think that's the type of amenity that we need to look at. And if we can back up a second and kind of come to an agreement where we can say this is what we're comfortable with. We're comfortable with the numbers. We're comfortable with the budget, with the overages. I think then we can move forward. But the other problem is that we always have the opportunity cost, right? So I don't see this as a situation where if we finish this bond and we have $12 million left over, I don't think we should turn around to the public and say we didn't spend $12 million. If the opportunity cost conversation always comes up when we talk about projects like this, then we should be having a conversation about what is the best use for the overage, or for the underrun, right? To take the improvements as far as they can go in all these other places, right? We hear about the special request list every year, and there's a bunch of capital stuff that doesn't get taken care of. But that's beyond the scope of this conversation.
But it's not to some extent, because I think that when we talk about, I don't agree that the expanded press box is a necessity. I think it makes the people in there feel more comfortable because they have more room for their elbows. And I would rather see that $3.1 million spent on the list of things that, let me just remind everyone, I wasn't here for this prior conversation. This was something that's new to me. I attended the meeting. I had all kinds of thoughts in my head that I would have liked to contribute, but now I'm here. So, the percentage of people that are actually going to be able to make use of that expanded press box outside of the scope is so small that the cost per person using it is exponentially higher than any other facility that we would use because of the square footage alone. So I don't feel comfortable spending and approving additional bonds. I mean, additional bond money for that purpose. I think there's other uses that are a much broader cost per person for usage that would, if we were going to talk about extra expansion, those concession stand people are like working their tails off to support their kids, to be out there on the field, like they're giving their heart. Let's put it in concession stand. Let's give them a place to like meet and debrief after they're done with the night. Like, I think there's and I get the whole amenities piece. I get the keeping up, in my opinion, keeping up with the Joneses of the communities around us. But we're Pearland for a reason, and we're proud of the idea that we do everything we do at less cost per student than any other district around us. So why would we not be more proud that we can be world champion sports for less cost?
Can I jump in on that? Can I keep talking?
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
from my experience on the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Chamber of Commerce, and the EDC board, Pearland has a history of building to the right size. And that's just not where I want to be, right? If we need a facility that's going to take care of 800 people, we're going to build a facility that's going to take care of 799 people, cram that one last person in there, and we're going to say how happy we are that we saved whatever dollars on that, right? I don't think that's where our philosophy needs to be. Who knew in whenever it was, that Dawson was going to be as big as it is? There's probably, the people who were here then probably didn't have the data for them to know that that was going to be that big of a campus, right? But that's the kind of thing I don't want to get caught in, right? I don't want to miss the future. I don't want to build too small, right? And I just frankly don't think that cost per person, the number of people that are going to be served are reasons not, for me, right? They're not reasons to just completely take that project off of the board. But I think that for me, the solution here is to pull this back, right? And maybe there needs to be more communication between this body, our architects, our contractors, and our bond oversight committee, because up until now, those three bodies have not been in the same room that I know of, right? Now, granted, we might not, yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say that we have been working together we've been meeting over a year now. And the architects all come and fill us
And we have
in.
board representation at those meetings.
But that started after the
Right.
press box in the
And
spring.
right.
That's
So
when
they
it
should've-
started.
Okay.
So
There
what
should
I'm
have
saying
been.
is
Hold
that
on a
So-
second. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
no, wait,
Wait,
wait.
whoa,
What I'm
Wait a
saying
minute.
is
Whoa,
that
whoa, whoa,
Do you have the
whoa.
diagrams for
Whoa,
the
whoa.
press box by any chance?
This
Whoa,
has
back
not.
up.
This has
Not the
not
time.
happened. This has not happened.
Exactly.
This is great, right? To have the representation of the committee, the entire board, and our design professionals and our staff all in the same place talking about this, right? This hasn't happened before.
Yes.
And again, I don't want to right size that press box. I don't want to build too small, right? And I think that the project that's there is good. Even that facade, right?
It's
when
beautiful.
when you add another $2 million onto it, because that's our estimates were 3.3, and I think we're at 5.5, right? When I first looked at it, I was like, man, they priced me out, right? But then as I thought about what I want to put there for the people who come to the stadium, for the people who come, for the kids who play, that's where I want to go, right? And again, if we have to back up, maybe to get there, hold off, right?
We can almost get there on the facade.
And then
I mean, we can have.
I don't think that the answer to, and I won't forecast anybody's vote, but I don't think that the answer is like, no, we'll never do this, maybe, right? I'm just talking about the majority. But I'm just saying, maybe if we got down the line a little further, we were more concrete on what we had left over, maybe we could get there. And then
All right.
let's just think real big, okay? How much money do we need to spend on that facility? We've already done the lights.
That's
Right.
my point.
Okay,
Right.
we've done the lights, right? And the lights
Don't
need
like
to be
them.
done, but we have to have now we have an issue where we have to light the stands, right? So something else has to be done.
Add it all up. Let me interject
And we're
on your
still going
thought.
to be, well, wait, let me finish my statement. We're still going to be, what would a new stadium, Phil, I hate to put you on, Mr. Rudd, I hate to put you on the spot, but if we looked at building a new concrete stadium,
40 million.
what are we looking at? I didn't think so.
And let me
45 years
interject
ago.
something
Okay.
there, Charles, to that
Mhm.
point that I've been thinking about. Whichever side of this you're on, back in 2016, the board made a conscious decision to not build a $40 to $50 million stadium, even though right south of us, Alvin was passing that. They listened to the long-range planning committee and to others and said, let's live with what we got and let's fix it up with what we got. So regardless of how you feel about the press box,
Mhm.
we have to remember that that initial decision saved a good $40 million right off the bat.
So that was a discussion. We talked about maybe a new stadium. And we
Way
said,
back
no,
when.
we're not going that way.
Yes.
That was part of the long-range planning discussions, a new facility
Okay.
versus renovation and.
And the
Well, I
practice
was getting ready to say,
facilities.
maybe now we still see that we have the need for a new stadium, but I'll hold that thought. And maybe since you always say we're not going to do that. But again, let's just back up and just maybe have some more conversations about it, and then just, maybe we can get to where we need to be.
Well, and I want to add, out of our conversations that we've had in the Bond Oversight Committee, it is not that we have as a collective, personal issue against the press box or the facade.
Sure.
In fact, to be completely honest, if you were to poll that room, I think you would get more positivity over the facade because they do like the idea of the unity of now that us having two different high schools. And so I just want to be clear with that because this is not an adversarial type of moment. This is the citizens that y'all appointed. And a couple of things. The idea for pushing it to the end, I think the Bond Oversight Committee would absolutely love that, just in the sense that y'all asked us to be on this committee. We have fulfilled this, we are fulfilling this duty to how it was designed, and that y'all are respecting what we sold to the voters. And I know you worked very hard at that. What was sold to the voters back then. And if y'all remember and what I talked about earlier, and some of y'all were, actually I don't know if Dr. Kelly was in the room, but when the Bond Oversight Committee was created, it was for this reason, to protect and just to work together with the school board. So I'm stepping out and saying that I think we would absolutely love that idea to look at the order.
Yeah.
It's
and
not about being against one
Right.
it's not about being
Right.
against. At this point in time, like you, I'm not going to speak for the individual voting, but
Yeah, I get it, and it's about making sure that the dollars are there and so forth and so on, right? And I completely get it, and I can't take the work and a unanimous resolution from a committee and just kind of ignore it, right? I feel that it has to be given its due, even though I'm clear in saying that this is the scope I want, right? And if we push it, I will more than likely be pushing for more, right, than it's in the current scope. And if it gets to a certain point, I don't know if we have the opportunity cost conversation. I don't think it'll get to a point where we have to go back to the voters, but I think there's, given the issue of time, right, if we push this back, I think there's a way that we can come to an agreement and move forward.
Mr. Tillis. So, in hearing everybody but Mr. Botkin, did you want to say something?
Just wait for my turn.
Okay. If we were, I mean, are there any other construction things that are being built at Pearland that are tied into the renovations at the rig?
No, ma'am. But I guess what I'd recommend, if you do feel like you want to delay the press box and
Right.
consider it at a later date, I would meet with my team, and I think we could bring to you next month a GMP for the expanded bleachers and the other parts of the project, and just wait on the press box if that's the way
On that side
that you
of
think.
things.
So we get everything but the press box. We come back a year later when we've got all the pricing, and then you could make decisions on the press box and the facade, if that's the will of the board.
So
I
let me ask
personally
you.
would want to hold the entire thing.
Right.
Yeah, let me ask you on that, because if we do only the cost of the other stands, I mean, that could mean that there's I mean, we might get a break for some, you know, as far as construction costs, right? If you put it all together.
I don't know. Maybe some tariffs will get moved, so steel will go
Well,
back down 20%.
I mean,
know.
obviously,
I don't
you
know.
run the risk of, you delay it a year,
Yeah.
any
One never
inflation
know.
costs, they normally run, you know, anywhere from 3 to 10%. So it could be, we bring it back, you know, to you a year from now, and instead of an additional $3.1 million, it could be an additional, you know, couple $100,000 above that, most likely.
But I
Or it could
want
be
to
less.
advise the board too. I mean, what I'm hearing from Mr. Gooden is delay. Mr. Berry seconds that. I think that you even thought that it might be a good idea.
We wanna wait
I'm
for-
not
Well, you know,
seconding, I'm not
I
saying
wanna hear what
delay, I'm
Lance has to
saying
say.
just go with the original scope.
Well, you did,
Because
but wait to the end.
No,
But do you have?
no.
I mean, of the
Oh,
people that
for the-
supported to move this forward, are those folks willing to go back to the $3 million original
That's
scope?
what I'm asking.
I don't think we can go back to the original.
Yeah, we
scope.
can do anything we want.
I mean,
We can.
and we could. I don't think it'd be appropriate to.
Well, that
because
would have, and that
we
would
had a
also.
huge discussion earlier where we decided that the original scope was not appropriate. It was.
You would also have to redesign the thing,
Right.
right? You
You-
can't
you-
just
you're-
say
You go back to the
undo
original scope, you
and-
delay it a year, essentially.
right.
Yeah.
So
I would like to hear what Trustee Bodkin has to say.
Yeah.
First off, let me address this, since it was brought up by Ms. Hanks. The Bond Oversight Committee meeting was all pure timing about a trustee that could not be there for the two events that I had to attend to. So I was a trustee, and there's other alternates on that on that meeting that were supposed to be there also as alternates. So that's the reason why they were not there. It was only 2 meetings prior to that meeting, and so I've attended every meeting since then, and so have the alternates. So that will be addressed. It's kind of funny because this is the most passionate discussion we've had about the bond. Now, somebody answer me the reason why that is. We haven't talked this much about technology. We haven't talked this much about any other $220 million bond project. We have not talked about any of that. And it's really easy to understand why. It's always been, and it's always in every community, that it's the way it looks. And no one wants to look bad, right? No one wants to, we're giving everything to athletics. Because, when everybody talks about the rig, they talk about athletics. They don't talk about the band, 350 members that come there, the band competition, the 1,770 hours that rig is rented throughout the year. They're not talking about the most iconic thing in the city. If you ask somebody a question, go meet me at Challenger Elementary, they may say, where is that? But you say, meet me at the rig, they know where it is, right? So it's interesting to me that we're having a passionate discussion about something that we're trying to make better for everyone, the community as a whole. And that's all I'm not on the board for any other reason than to make the community better. Our whole community, which includes, let's see, on any given night, let's see how many people that was that I calculated. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14 different user groups on a Friday and Thursday or Friday night that are part of a group that are actually at the rig on just one night. And then of that, you know, there's lots of people that participate, parents that like to see their kids come perform on the field, or come perform at their band competition or track meets. And let's not forget that those track meets are also used for elementary and middle school. And you know, it's kind of funny to me. I believe that besides food service, that extracurricular activities at the rig is maybe the only seams of revenue that we have, that an outside revenue. And if you look at the spike, anytime we have an event in the city, it's an absolute spike. And if you, like they always said, that's why so many communities in the state of Texas and around, they build things because they build them and make them better because people will come. I just left Boston, just got back. It was great. They just spent the past 2 years building on their east side of their river right there to make it better. A part of their city, to make it better so it'll draw more people to it. So, you know, as I sit back and listen to everybody talk, and I was in the Bond Oversight Committee, and I expressed it to them. I expressed it to them that you know, it was a miss. And if I knew what I knew now when we started this bond process, absolutely I would have put it in there. 100%. It would have probably been, you know, I wasn't on the long range planning committee. As a matter of fact, there's no board member that is currently serving on this board that was on that long range planning committee. So currently right now, because it was Rusty DeBoer and Mr. Gant, Virgil Gant, God rest his soul. However, so.
Dr. Gant's part of our bond oversight committee, just to remind everybody.
Yeah, Dr. Gant, but I'm talking about her husband was on that, yes.
I know,
So,
I'm just, he's being spoken for.
So anyway, back to what I was trying to get to is, you know, with so many user groups and so many things, and we're trying to build world-class facilities, world-class schools. I mean, look, maybe I'm the only person in the room that figures this out, but we're not dealing with teaching kids how to be better at mathematics. We're battling getting the kids to school and the school experience. Because guess what? They love to stay home and stay on this thing the whole time. They love to stay home and do things. You know, kids have a choice. They have a choice to come to school or not. That's their choice. Parents don't make them. A high school kid either comes to school or he does not. People don't understand that, but they do. Parents could drop them off and they could leave the campus right there and, you know, not come to school that day. That's their choice. And so when you elevate the student school experience, that's what it's about. And y'all will start seeing it around the country. We're already seeing it everywhere. That's what this generation of kids and the future generations of kids, that's what it's about. And if we don't protect that as an education establishment, and look, the rig and all of that facilities, that's part of it. I mean, don't tell me a 7-year-old kid that's walking up to the rig for the first time sees that big rig and sees that, let's just say that facade's right there, and he sees, I'll get to go there one day. There's no other chance he gets to see that. Maybe he's going to see his sister that's in the band, or his brother that's part of the sports medicine group. I mean, it's all kind of variations. And for us not to protect that and make it better, you know, and the other groups we haven't heard from. We've heard from a lot of groups. We haven't heard from the extracurricular activity people. We haven't heard from the athletic director. We haven't heard from the facilities director on this particular subject. So, you know, we haven't ever heard from them. And so, you know, I'd like to, you know, hear from them. And then I'm all for because if we don't expand the press box, then we're also lying to the voters too. I mean, we're not following through with what we said we would do. So if we expand it, if we push the project back, then we're doing something else that we don't want to do on anything else. We told them we were going to do these things at the rig originally. We made it a little better, but now we're talking about going back and not doing anything. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Can I,
I mean,
ask another question? Because The thought that I have
Yeah, I mean,
when I was talking to citizens about these issues, one of the ideas that they brought up was that back, I guess 12 years ago or so, there was a push to privatize funding to get like the Jumbotron out at the rig. And there was a push to bring community partners and privatize the funds so that there's donations made with a plaque on the wall or a room named after a certain facility in the press box or whatever. Is there a play to be able to bring our community into that a bit, to be able to raise some of those funds to offset some of the bonds? Because the bigger picture that I'm thinking about, and we haven't talked about at this point, is that we just approved a budget that was $8 million in deficit. Now, we've done some things to offset some of those costs, and we have great staff who's helped us to get money to offset some of those costs through grants and such. But what if we pushed a little harder and tried to find some other money that wasn't coming, that didn't force us to sell this so that we're not increasing our INS debt rate even higher? Because that's coming. As soon as we spend this money, I'm not against any of this, and I am right with you with what you're saying, every bit of it. The culture that we create for students is the relationship that keeps them engaged, and it only supports their education and academics across the board. What I'm saying is, number one, the voters didn't approve this, and number two, I worry about what situation we're going to be in if we can't get a TRE passed and the bottom line of our debt INS rate continuing if we sell these bonds. So I'm just wondering if there's another play to be considered.
My initial thoughts are, first of all, I give great credit to Ben Pardo. He's the one that did all this work on basically what ended up to be something like a $660,000 donation to our school primarily for the video board. Now we've entered into a new contract with them, same hospital system, for another, I think it's 3 years, if I remember right.
Memorial Hermann.
So the problem with that, Crystal, is that they have a sort of exclusivity when it comes to the rig. And so it'd be difficult for us to find a major sponsor with big bucks that can really get into the middle of the rig. But it's not a bad idea. It's just a more longer term idea. I'm not sure.
So they have like first right of refusal, right? Not just.
Yes, but I think with the rig itself, they already have naming rights, and so I don't know. For example, the other big players would probably be the other hospital systems.
When I can think of some parents that have businesses in town that would be more than happy to have their family name contributed.
Yeah. Well, if they stayed away from somebody that was competing with Memorial Hermann, raised it privately, I don't think there's any.
But Crystal,
So, yes,
I mean, that's great, but are we opening ourselves up for, aren't we obligated to take care of our own facilities without asking for?
That would be a part of it. I mean, this isn't
But
something that's
why,
new.
so if you open it up like that, then why not start naming schools after people? And, you know what I'm saying? You're fixing
Honestly,
just
at the
open a
right
can.
cost.
I'm just saying, it's not about, look, the idea is good in theory, but man, if you start doing that, then you got naming buildings after people and stuff. If we want to start in that realm and people donate, $20 million to the Education Foundation, then
That'd be awesome.
That'd be
I
awesome.
mean, that's what I'm
But
saying.
that's another hat, and I'm not representing
that's,
tonight.
that-
Yeah.
that's,
Educational opportunity
but I don't. If we want to do
exponentially.
that, that's something we could look at. But it's. Are we willing to go down that road? If you do one thing, you're going to fix to open up for a whole other can of worms, and then we're going to be at a university that's, that they're naming buildings, and I'm just saying, I don't disagree with trying to get the money in a different way. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just
Lance,
saying.
I'd like to address a couple things that you brought up. So when you talked about IT and the fact that we haven't talked this much about it,
We haven't talked about anything this much.
We've talked consistently about IT. We've even had Mr. Barté create a spreadsheet of every single dollar and every single item that he spent. And so we've gone back and forth, I believe, on IT. So we've had many discussions, a lot more than this rig or this press box. The fact you made a comment that there's this fear or perception of how we vote or how we look on approving something for athletics. There's no fear for those of us, myself personally, that have voted against The expanded press box, for me, it's about being physically responsible to the voters. When we went out and we had this bond package and we laid the prices out, people looked at that and said, okay, I can live with $3 million for an expanded or renovated press box, and they pressed the button to vote yes. They didn't press the button to vote for $6 million worth of a press box. So it's not about the perception of, do we look right or wrong in voting for it? It's about being physically responsible as a trustee, and that's where I stand on this. Now, you talk about two more things I'll address, but you talk about, all the different user groups that use this. Back to Crystal's point, how many of those user groups are getting to use the press box? At a football game, who's sitting in that press box? Is it board trustees? Is it administration? Is it camera people? Is it coaches? Or is it the taxpayers that are paying for this? I don't believe it's probably the taxpayers or their children that are up there watching these games, right? So who are we impressing when we talk about, you keep throwing out all these user groups that go to use the rig? They're using the facilities at the rig. They're using the turf, the track, all those type of things. But we're specifically talking about who's using the press box and how well it looks to those people. So when you talk about being physically responsible and spending $3 million here, how many of our schools need new roofs or a generator or other maintenance things that we've cut that particular budget? So when you talk about priorities, is a press box and housing someone from an opposing team that's recording a football game as important as replacing a roof on an elementary where our kids attend school? And that's where I stand on these issues. It's not about how it looks to the voters, how we look as far as athletic versus band versus this group or that group. It's about what's physically responsible and what's right for our district.
I made that statement, Sean, because we're a couple people up here saying to just delay everything.
I'm not saying that.
No, just delay even the 3.1 expanded press box and push everything towards the end. Because if we don't do the GMP tonight, that's what we're saying.
Well, and just to clarify, Trustee Murphy, the voters did say they wanted an expanded press box.
Absolutely.
They did
and that's
say
fine.
that
And I
they
was
wanted to
okay at
invest
3,
in that.
and I'm okay at 3.2, 3.1,
Sure.
what the voters approved. And then when PBK brought the bond scope to us, they said, here's your scope, 3 million-ish, right? They said, oh, by the way, we can do an expanded version for this amount. And there was one more that went all the way up to 9 million.
Right.
So there was A, B, and C. There was an original bond scope that was within the scope that the voters approved. They just elected to show you the nicer car and then the even nicer car that you could do. And that's when, earlier in the spring, we decided, hey, you know what? We like the nicer car. Why don't you show us that car, come back in September, and give us the final price on that? And that's how we got to where we are. Now, we're having a very long discussion, a lot of speeches, but ideally, there's 5 people that supported this moving forward. So unless that's changed, and Crystal wasn't here, so that vote may be a little bit different. If my question is, are those folks going to go back to the original, at this point, willing to go back to the original bond scope of work to approve that GMP?
Well, I just have 2 things to say before we do that, and I don't want to make a speech, but one, Mr. Tillis, was the facade at Pearland High School within bond scope, or was that added on?
That was a complete add-on. It was
complete
never
add-on.
discussed as part of the.
And do you remember how the vote on that was for the facade at Pearland High School?
There was never a vote. We decided that we would just bring you back the pricing as an alternate, and then you could make.
Well, and then we voted 7-0 on that GMP.
Talking about the actual facade at
Actually,
Pearland High School.
No,
Oh,
he's
facade
talking
at
about the
Pearland High
facade
School.
that was added on to to Pearland High School, so
Right.
that we can make it look like we did some
And I
work.
think every single one of us voted
that was
for
it.
that.
And I voted for it. Yep.
So
$800,000.
So I know, and but we went beyond bond scope.
True.
So that shows that we can go beyond scope when we find it necessary. Why is a facade necessary? It's not going to be used by students. No one's going to be studying math at the facade. The reason that, especially for Pearland High School, and this is something that Trustee Botkin brought up so many times, that Pearland High School, when you walk into it, it looks like a hospital wing. It looks like it's been, I mean, I don't mean to be offensive, but it looks like it's an old building because it is an old building.
It is old.
We provide these things to make the environment and the experience a whole lot better for our students.
And so is the rig.
Right, and so is, if not more importantly, because thousands of our community citizens go to the rig. Now, as for the point that, hey, no one uses the press box. There's no reason to do to go on a not okay, but it's not used by a lot of students is what the point was. And I think it's a good point, but I want to take us back and raise a hypothetical, and I hate hypotheticals, but if we could go back to the 2006 bond when they were deliberating and discussing Dawson High School, and if we were there today, knowing what we know today, we were there, we would have, of course, said, yes, you know what, let's go beyond bond scope, expand that school because we know the population is going to grow, and then we wouldn't have had to do it, what was it,
Yesterday.
8 years later?
The other day, yeah.
So the point is that we know that the bond scope presented to us was not enough. And if we go ahead either and delay the whole thing, not improve our concession stands for our hardworking parents, not improve the sound system because, again, sound system is not necessary. If you want to see the score, look at the scoreboard. If you want to hear a kid's name, sorry, right? I mean, it's not necessary. The things we do to make the environment and experience better for everybody. And I think the press box, expanding it, would prevent us coming back years later from now and saying, you know what, I wish that board had done that instead of having to cost taxpayers years from now.
Allow me to make a point of information, is that we've got to be at half an hour at least on this, am I right? Okay. And so we need to kind of move this toward a solution. But I think what's being left out at this point when we're talking about what decision we're going to make is that the entire Bond Oversight Committee says, hold it.
No, they said don't do it at all.
No,
they said don't spend any of the money.
hold it.
against
They said
No, we said
follow the
don't
bond
do
scope.
it until
They said
all of the
don't.
projected,
To everything else
the
is done.
pledge projects are completed.
But read the very last point about the excess money. It was to send that back, or to not sell those
No,
bonds,
no,
right?
no,
Just
that's
reread
not,
that, if you
no.
would.
I mean, you can have my notes here,
No,
but what my point was about are you talking about
Not selling the
not
bonds.
selling
Yeah,
bonds?
the excess bonds.
That was a discussion that was when we were campaigning about should all those 35 projects be completed, the bonds would possibly not be sold. And it would be after the projects were completed that then the school board would be entrusted with that decision to then decide, are we going to sell more bonds or are we not?
And so are you speaking on behalf of Dina or the
No, she's saying through Q&A. She's saying, remember the round around the town, right? Q&As.
Our
Doesn't matter.
Our
50
60
But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm speaking on behalf of the Bond Oversight Committee. I'm not speaking on behalf. I'm telling you our experience. Every single one of the people that are on the Bond Oversight Committee were on that long range planning committee and went to all of those meetings.
Sure,
and
I believe it.
And so and they campaigned hard for the bond,
And we appreciate that.
the
Absolutely.
bond.
And so that's why I'm saying at this point we're leaving out the fact that we've all got our arguments for or against.
That
We're
is
leaving out the fact that the committee is saying hold it, right? And we keep having these phantom opportunity cost conversations, which, we talk about, is there a school that needs a roof? I mean, well, is there a school that needs a roof? Is there, let's
Well,
get
then we
that,
could-
right? So we
we
don't
can
have to
guess
have
that
these
forever.
phantom, so we don't have to have, what's that list look like, right? And let's get at it. Jeff talks all the time about we should be able to have more control over our budget so we can do that stuff out of different budgets.
If we had a
But-
capital improvement, 10-year capital improvement
Right.
plan, we would know exactly what we need, but
Well,
we don't
that's-
have that.
we're not going there.
I get, Don,
none of
those
Mr.
projects
Tillis,
are
can you
approved
ask,
by the voters.
what's the square footage of the current press box?
Ben, do you know the square footage? Is it?
So we're increasing it with the current bond scope to 4,200 square feet, which is more than doubling the size of the actual press box. I've actually been up there, and it is tight. I agree, but to more than double the size of the current press box, and then to go above to triple the size of the press box, I think is overkill, and overkill does exist in a lot of our communities today. And I certainly don't want it to exist in our community, especially when we're dealing with taxpayer dollars. So, I would be more apt to say, let's just follow the bond scope like the committees originally said that we were going to do. I think it's more than ample size, more than double the size of the current press box.
I would disagree. And I think that
How
But
do you
there's
know? What are you
nothing-
basing that
nothing
number on,
in
saying that
this
it's not
bond
enough?
program,
Okay,
nothing
okay,
in
okay,
this
okay.
bond program is going to get
Part of-
close
Mr.
to
Gooden.
being overkill.
Mr. Berry.
What?
Not even close.
Good,
Let's
and
talk
Barry,
about the employment
hang
that
on.
we did over at Carlson Elementary School.
Hang on.
Well, let's
Let's
talk about this.
law in elementary school.
Well, let's talk
All
about
right?
this.
Jeff,
There's
and
no
We're
then-
going to
way
spend
we're gonna get
20%
close to overkill.
of the cost of a
Funny
new
you say-
stadium on an update.
Hey, we're not going there. Okay?
Waste of taxpayer
You
money.
know, Madam
This is,
President.
this is what I'm going to suggest, okay? I need a motion to go forward with what is presented by administration, or two, a different motion that leads us to either A, wait until all of the bond scope has been completed, and then we can revisit. But that's it. That's what I'm hearing. So that's your options right now.
Agreed.
So,
Madam President, I'll make a motion that we postpone items
Charles, real quick.
3 and 4
Hang on.
until the October meeting, pending a conversation between this body and the Bond Oversight Committee.
Okay, so I have a motion on the table by Mr. Gooden to postpone.
I have a question before anybody seconds. So I'm reading this as the superintendent's recommendation, and I'm just reading this. I'm not making a motion. The superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the guaranteed maximum price GMP amendment to the contract with the Stewart Builders for a sum of not to exceed $8,167,264 for services, so on and so forth. That's the superintendent. That's the administration's recommendation.
Correct.
Is that, okay, just making sure.
All right, so I have Mr. Gooden's motion. Is there a second? All right, hearing none, the wait does not pass. Or doesn't move forward.
I make a motion that we postpone this discussion till a later date.
Isn't that what we
I-
just,
it's
isn't that what the same motion?
Well, I
Well,
think the
uh,
difference is that what Charles was saying is pending a discussion with the Bond Oversight Committee till October. And I don't know exactly what that looks like or exactly how that comes to fruition and putting those details. Maybe I'm,
Because I think there's a path forward for this project if these two bodies.
and I guess
Communicate.
I'm fine with the idea of waiting till the end of the entire bond scope is complete before we talk about additional projects that need to be completed, and this being at the top of that list, because there's obviously interest by board members to want to flesh this out and see if this can go forward once we have an idea of what exactly is left over.
Do we know, Mr. Chapman, if we do change the scope of the project, what that time frame for you guys to draw that?
We'll be delaying it a year. And what are the implications of that, just to be very clear?
You'll have to reject both of these.
I know that, but what are the
GMPs,
implications?
And then we will redraw it. We will rebid it as a competitive sealed proposal, and we will bring back to you GMPs.
That sounds
at
like more of a
appropriate time to
process.
build the project.
What does that do for
Process
the
the-
current rig status? Like, I mean, is it
What are the
usable?
implications of delaying?
Well, we would recommend that we would pull out the projects that we think are what I would call non-controversial. We would bring back to you almost immediately a fresh GMP of the visitors' bleachers, the concession stand, the officials' locker room, the sound system,
The
maybe not the
concession
sound
stand.
system because it goes into the
Okay,
press box.
he said the concessions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Everything
sound
but the press
system
box.
is
Well,
needed.
no sound system.
Everything but the press box and potentially the sound system, because the sound system goes in the press box and it's tied in with the video, and it gets all, it's not a clean thing. We could look at doing a majority of the new lights for your bleachers, especially at the new visitors bleachers, and so that would become its own much smaller project of around $3 million. We'd immediately bring back that to you, if not in October, in November, just because there's a lot of ins and outs there. We have to redraw the whole thing. But that is not a long lead project. The long lead project is the press box.
So let me ask you
Mr.
something.
Good, was that?
Let me ask you a
Let
question.
me just get through this. So that's project A. It doesn't take as long to build the bleachers and do those little projects, so it's not as time sensitive. The press box takes a long time. We were going to, if you approved it tonight, we were basically going to stop starting shop drawings for the giant steel going up tomorrow. And so there's not an option really to delay a month because that kills my fabrication time. So you really, if you want to go and talk to the oversight committee this month or next month, we're really talking about a complete year delay because I need to bid this when I bid this during the calendar year to order my steel, to get my steel here, to give us a chance to make sure that we are open for your first football game because I'm not missing your first football game.
Okay.
So,
let me say this. I think I'm trying. You know, I always, in my thinking, I'm always trying to find. You know, where's the board majority so we can move forward? I think Crystal was advancing the idea that let's wait until the end of the projects, and in the meantime, do what we have to do, which is the
Talk to the committee.
non-controversial items as Jeff described them. That to me seems like something the majority of the board would probably support from what I'm hearing all these different positions. Wait until the end.
I did hear Charles say that he's concerned about that. I didn't really understand the objection to moving forward with things like that. What your concern would be about moving forward with those non-controversial items.
I don't think it's necessary to add the complexity of breaking this thing apart. And again, it's just, I don't want to add the complexity of breaking it apart. And I think if you move forward with that, you do those non-controversial pieces, and then you come back, and then you do a press box, and then maybe you come back and do a facade. You're going to have, like, what, 3 years of construction at the spot?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going in and doing it at one point in time. I don't see that just, I don't know, maybe it's just my personal experience, but that just doesn't seem like an option to me to break it apart. That's my option.
I don't see waiting to the end to decide whether or not we were going to add to the already expanded press box either. I think, you know, we move forward with the current bond scope, be done with it.
But we can't do
We
that.
got that, Jeff.
Just
but
like, we can't do that just saying, hey, go with the current bond spot, because they'd have to go back and redesign the press box down.
Can we hear from
and all
Mr.
that.
Pardo just for a second? Because I know we've heard from almost everyone else, but I just wanted to get your opinion if that's appropriate.
It is but
Concerning
I was hesitant to do this to him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
But,
I don't want you
I'll
to
try
get in
I'll
trouble
try,
here.
I'll try.
It's all right,
I'll
Carl.
use my gavel if I have to.
But my
okay?
question is essentially, when you look at the current press box, the current proposal on original bond scope, and then the extended bond scope.
And from what I understand in terms of the press box, I want to say when you talk about total square footage in terms of functional square feet, and when I say functional square feet, those are two different things, because when you look at square footage, they take the lobby downstairs, they take everything upstairs, but functional is what's in the rooms. You know, people sitting down, kids sitting in a closet that we turned into a video room, and so I think there's probably 1,800, 2,022 total. When you say the whole press box, I think the bond scope added 1,200 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. So that would take the current bond scope from a press box of 2,000, 2,400 to add another 1,200 feet. So it wouldn't double in size. And so if you're talking about true functional space double in size, you know, when you're talking about a 4,000 square foot press box, you're getting close to a good sized press box if it's getting to 4,000, 4,500 square feet. People around us, in terms of, I know it's been alluded to in terms of what other districts are doing, they are doing some crazy things. I would agree that when you go to some of these places, they've got press boxes that are 7,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet. That's crazy to me. But I think when we're trying to live in that world of 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, where I think that's kind of where we are, I think that is a functional space that I think will do justice to the rig. And so going beyond that, I don't know in terms of wasted space, but like I said, when you do comparisons to Clear Creek ISD and to Pridgeon, we took a trip out to Pridgeon to a renovated press box. And my first thought when I saw that press box was, this is beautiful. How many square feet is this? And then my first thought is, we don't need something quite this big. And so, and I think that one at Pridgeon is, what is it? 8,500 square feet. So it was not nowhere near. I thought if we could take this model, which I think that's what I shared with the architects, let's take this model and let's reduce it in size, and that's kind of where we would need to be. And so I think we came up with that number close to that 4,500, 5,000 square foot press box. So that's kind of where those numbers came from. And I think that, you know, if you talk about bond scope, you go in the press box today, it's really tight. It really, really is. I think if you stay with bond scope, it's still gonna be tight. It's not gonna be quite what you would want that press box to be. But I think there's also limits to that as well. I think we just need to be, look at that and look at what those sizes need to be. And I think after walking the CCISD facility as well, because I took a trip there as well and I got a tour of that facility, my thought was the same thing. I thought this press box is beautiful, but it's maybe too big for what we would need. And I think the CCISD press box, do you know what that one is? Y'all don't know what that was. I think that one's close in that same range of, you know, 7,500 to 8,500 square feet. So taking those same samples and just reduce them in size, I felt like, you know, we could, a 4,000, 4,500 to a 5,000, 5,500 square foot press box would be what we would need to where I felt you can feel good about dollars being spent. You know, I don't know that the $3 million that was initially allocated was, I would agree with Mr. Floyd that that 3 was probably not what was needed in the scope of what was around and what we actually need to be functional at the rig. So.
Thank you.
Did you talk to the bond
Oversight Committee,
focus committee when they came around and
the
shared
long
those
range,
concerns?
the long range planning committee?
Yeah, the long range planning.
No, I never had any conversations with that committee. I mean, I went to one. I wasn't on that. I went to one or two meetings, but I wasn't necessarily, nobody asked me.
But you were a member of the committee.
Well, Ben attended some of the meetings, and we consulted with Ben on the needs of the athletic programs. But it's a give and take, you know, trying to meet budgets and squeeze numbers and things like that.
Yeah, well, I attended a couple of meetings.
You got out of here. Mr. Chapman, I have a couple of, or at least one detailed question about the renovations that we're talking about. I mentioned the lights and that we've got to do something to light the home side stands and, of course, the new visitor stands because we, you know, made the changes to the field lights. What's that plan look like for that's in this GMP here?
Right now, we have 2 options for the lights on the home side. One, if you just do the expanded press box and not the facade, the new lights will be on poles adjacent to the bleachers and on the press box itself. If you do the facade, we have plans to put the lights on some of the canopies that flank the press box as well as on the press box itself. On the visitor side, we'll be lighting them with poles.
Okay. And those canopies that are shown, those extend over and those would provide a little bit of shade, kind of like Turner Stadium up in Humble?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They're by no means covering the entire.
Right. It's just a kind of a sun thing. Okay. Now with
Wait, Charles.
Yes.
I'm going to give us 10 more minutes on this topic.
I'll be real quick. With the concession stands, and are we renovating bathrooms as well as a part of this?
Not at this time.
Okay. No bathrooms. Okay. And I guess the concession stand we were talking about. What's that plan look like for the concession stands?
The main thing we're doing there is right now the transaction windows are not functional.
Right.
And so we're replacing all of the transaction windows so that people are not staring at each other like this.
Right.
And they have asked for us to make their storage area in the back more secure and accessible through. And that's for the home side. And then we're adding a ticket booth to underneath the new bleachers. And we are adding, we're enlarging the officials' locker room so that they aren't so cramped, which was another line item in the bond scope.
Okay, this is the last detailed question. I spent a lot of time over there, I guess. There are non-stick strips on the stairs as you go up the
Non-stick?
Non-slip. Excuse me,
Non-slip,
non-slips. And a lot of them are torn up. Are those set to be replaced, or is that just going to stay as is?
Not at this time.
Okay, so that's my question, right? And that's why I'm saying is, if we wait, and you give me that time, well, not you give me, but I would like to use that time to even expand the scope even further because there's a lot of things that still aren't being done, right? That I think are key to the look and feel of the stadium. So if we're going to spend what are we talking about?
8 point.
Yeah, all this money, right? And there's still little things that are not quite straight, right? Like, I don't get, and the seat upgrades are still there, right? For the,
They are.
okay.
So,
Just to
so your
clarify, you're
goal,
saying
just to
just to wait.
clarify, your goal is to put this off so that you can convince the bond oversight committee or the community
We
that
can have
we can
conversations
further
with them.
expand that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around that.
No, what I said is that I'm comfortable with the scope as is. I'm pointing out that there are things that can still be done, right? And if we could get together with the committee, and if we postpone until we know exactly what we're going to have left over as far as bond dollars, then we can get this scope, right, comfortably between us and the committee. Because I think, I don't know, I just see that as a big deal, right? The statement they made, I think that's a big deal, right? And I don't think that we can, I'm uncomfortable with just going forward with what we've got here without giving that any, without giving that any credit or giving it any weight.
We just
right?
spent 45 minutes on it.
Right.
But-
And as to like the
But I think it should
non-slips-
change the decision, right? I think it should change the decision.
But in
And
terms of the-
that's kind of where I am.
But like with the non-slip strips, right? You don't have to delay the whole thing to put those in. You can put those in any day of the week, really. Right? A lot of
we
these
do have
They don't have to do,
contingencies.
that doesn't have to be a capital project, right? Okay, all right, great. But well, still, the point is, I think that the statement has to change the decision. And if I'm put in a position where I have to say, all right, well, you're either going to have to wait a year or you got to go forward, then, I got another decision to make.
Well, regardless, Jeff, if you're saying to stay with the same, it's
No.
going to be delayed a year.
You're saying no.
No,
If we don't go with what is presented tonight,
I'm saying what I said during the original vote. Stick with what the bond committee suggested. They had all these, they spent over a year. Then the bond oversight here is to keep the checks and balances associated with the bond programs intact.
okay.
Now, we've had many discussions while we were going through these projects. Remember when we voted on all these projects? How many times did we say, well, any additional projects are going to have to be added at the end? Many, 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 many times. And that wasn't, I thought we were all relatively in agreement. And, and I understand things change, times change. And, maybe an expansion of the press box would be warranted. It's possible. And apparently it was. I was on the losing end of that vote. But that's okay. I can live with that.
Well, I didn't, Charles, to your point, I believe Mr. Richter spoke when we voted on that, how to move forward. And I don't think the statement tonight had changed from when Mr. Richter spoke and the bond oversight was completely against it in the spring when we told them to move forward.
I went back and played Mr. Richter's comments and listened to this meeting in preparation for this meeting. And Mr. Richter, I don't want to misquote you, right? But I remember the question was asked about an expanded press box and a facade. And I think the response was none of that was presented to the bond committee, right? So you all didn't say yes or no to this in your meetings because it wasn't even
We didn't even talk about
a consideration. You just said that wasn't what we talked about, right? As far as, I'm sorry, sir?
Out of the scope of bond issue.
Right.
is what I stated.
Right, that was out of the scope of the bond issue, right? And I understood that, right? But again, as I said earlier, I don't think it's improper to
Okay, we're
push
done then.
things above,
We've got 3
our scope.
minutes.
But as Lance said, this attracted a lot of attention because this has attracted a lot of attention. So I yield my time back.
But so, if we push everything back, so we don't do nothing, and that goes against what the voters wanted. Because they said they were going to get expansion on a right?
To be clear,
Am
it
I
changes the
correct?
timeline.
I'm just asking.
It doesn't change
It
the
doesn't
fact that
change the scope, it just changes the
It'll get
timeline.
done,
changes the
but it won't get
timeline.
done.
But the bond
still
oversight
get done.
committee's main mission is to be on schedule. That is on schedule, on budget. We're on schedule, under budget.
But
We can't delay. That's going against what the bond oversight committee just
No,
asked.
no.
Talking about this wasn't even in the.
No, it wasn't about, the bond oversight committee, we never had any discussions as far as, that was all left up to administration as far as what, or whomever, architecture and however that worked out. what order that the projects went in.
Right, but
And
you just
so-
read it, right? I mean, in your values, the values
Yes,
of the oversight
yes,
committee.
I did read that in there,
Right.
and it was about being on time. But it is more importantly, the two items that we gave the voters was that all of that money would be the extra money would be spent afterwards. And as far as it being on time, it's really it's not. It's not set necessarily that if a project is delayed that we're saying, no, it can't be. It's all just like y'all are weighing pros and cons of what is the best use of the money. Would the Bond Oversight Committee agree that it would be worth pushing it to delay? And that would be, if you're saying that would be on us to agree for a postponement, then yes, we would, because we would feel that that was the better use of funds than the timing.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that that's not how I heard it, but I appreciate.
All right, so we're down to 1 minute. I'm serious. We've spent a lot of time. Everybody has said their
So,
2
Mr.
cents
Chapman.
several times.
if we go back to what, I don't even know how that would look like. If we go back to the $3.1 million press box that was original, apparently Mr. Pardo was kind of a part of.
He was absolutely a part of it.
Okay, I'm okay. So but that 3.1 looks like what this. Give me the square foot. What does that look like?
It's
Got 1 minute.
1 minute.
We had a minute. We're out of time.
basically, we keep the press box footprint as it is, and we are expanding out the back. That's it. So you can see the new stairs come in the back. We're adding a kitchen, we're adding an IDF, we're adding 2 restrooms. Right now it only has 1. It only has 1 stair right now.
Go to the as-is one, the expanded one, just for a second.
That's the as is.
Oh,
That's the existing.
this is existing. This is bond scope. This one he's about to click on.
That's the
right now.
existing
That's what we
press
got right
box.
The one he's about to click on
The one you're about to click on.
is the bond scope.
This is the bond scope.
So that corridor that goes behind it, that allows you to get to your seats, that goes away. We expand that into a corridor, so your ADA access is still there. It's routing up the elevator, go out either side, and connect to the bleachers, so our exiting is down through the bleachers. And so we are removing what was in the middle there for your scouts and your press room. Then you have a small video room and a small radio room on the first floor. Then you clock your PA and your home and your visitor announcers on the second floor.
Mr. Pardo just said that he was comfortable with the 4,500-ish square foot press box, correct?
Which is,
Well, this is 43. And this is talking about almost 6,000.
So what
Well,
was
Mr.
approved?
Pardo said it would be still cramped.
so
That
Mr.
was
Pardo requested, and whenever we were bringing the SD for the Pearland High School, we brought the 4,000 square foot. We were asked not only by Mr. Pardo, but also by the board to
I
bring
remember.
back. This
Yes.
was not PBK's idea.
No, we know.
I just wanted it on the video. That we would show you what comparable press box would be to the Alvin ISD press box, which is at Memorial Stadium and at their new district stadium of 6,000 square feet, because they wanted not the 8,000 that they have at Clear Creek or some of the larger districts, but comparable to a similar size press box that Mr. Bardo thought would be applicable for his needs. And so
Can
this
you-
is what that was.
Can you, Jeff, can you address what Ben had mentioned about usable space? Okay, so from a standpoint of going from 2258, as Jeff said, to 4307, I guess maybe now that we have a visual, can you point out, I guess, or explain the usable, what Mr. Pardo was talking about, the usable space, or
So just all of the rooms get bigger.
can you go back to the scope, which is 4307?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you can see the kitchen, for example. There's no janitor's closet here. The video room has 2 seats. The radio room has 2 seats. The coaches' room have 6 seats each. Now when I come to the expanded press box,
But I mean, I'm asking in comparison to the current, not the expanded.
oh, excuse me. So you can see that, I mean, just straight away, the visiting coaches is half a stair. The rooms are just very thin. There's one restroom for the whole thing. You have to go through a room to get to it.
So we are increasing in size. I mean,
Absolutely. We're just increasing out the back, so you're not getting any additional footage. Our design intent on this was to not go into the existing bleachers, that we could get the additional stairs, the additional restrooms, the additional IDF, and the additional kitchen without encroaching on the existing bleachers. And so this would give the appearance that it was not a new press box, that it was a press box that was renovated and added onto.
so architecturally, by adding to the back, you're increasing the size of the coaches area.
We are, because we're pulling that corridor. See this corridor that's right here? This is outside, like literally outside. So in the new press box, that corridor is inside, and so your coaches' rooms get all of this.
So the coaches area is getting bigger.
Bathrooms.
The scouting area is, so,
That's right.
and this is the bond scope.
This is the bond scope.
When Crystal gets back, I'm going to make a motion. Mr. Tillers, let me make sure I understand my numbers again. We're currently $12 million under.
That's correct.
And-
That includes, if you were to improve the additional $3.1 million for the expanded press box.
And then if we go with the facade, then I have to take 5.5 off of that.
That's correct.
We haven't started design on any of package E, correct?
You've selected the architect, you've selected the general contractor, and we are about
Oh,
to
you-
begin.
you're about to begin, okay.
this, design.
So you don't have a feel on any of those costs or?
Not
that.
yet, it's too early.
It's too early, okay. Okay.
While we're waiting on Crystal, Jeff, do you remember what on that 4,300, I don't have it, but what the cost, that cost was? 3,633, do you remember?
We never bid.
We never bid it out,
we never
roughly
bid
what
out.
it would be?
So it was just we just quoted y'all the bond scope price of, I think it was a little more than $3 million for that. Because the advantage there was, we weren't getting into the existing bleachers, we're coming behind it. And so we felt that there was good bang for the buck. The reason why the expansion is a little bit more expensive is because we're having to coordinate with that existing bleacher area. So the bleacher company is providing us a new structure that we're having to coordinate with all the way down to the ground that's integrated with their existing. And so it's a little bit more difficult and challenging, and so the price is a little bit more expensive for that per square foot. So that's why you notice that the small addition is about the same cost of renovating what you've got plus adding on to, because all the heavy lifting is already done for you.
All right. I think discussion has been had. Is there a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that the board approve the guaranteed maximum price amendment to the contract with Stewart Builders for a sum not to exceed $8,167,264 for services related to the rig portions of the Pearland High School 2016 bond project, and authorize the superintendent or his designee to execute the amendment and any other necessary documents on behalf of the school district.
So Mr. Gooden is making the recommendation that was presented.
Second.
Okay. There's a second by Mr. Floyd. The fear of asking this question, any further discussion?
I'll just make the mention that my first motion was to step back a month. And I was comfortable with the delays, but I think that in light of the discussion, I'm going to bring this forward for a vote.
Okay. All right. So, hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? So 3,
Would you please call for the no vote?
yeah, and for the no vote. All right, so we have Mr. Berry, Ms. Carbone, sorry, Mr. Murphy, Ms. Decker, for the no. And then for 4 is Gooden, Floyd, and Botkin. And I'm going to say that I was willing to sit down and talk,
Why didn't you second my motion?
because that's not what,
Okay.
no.
All right.
It needed, because I mean, I truly think that this is something that,
Well, if I had a second on that, we might have been able to make a little bit of leeway
What
there.
happens now?
Well,
motion,
that motion
fails.
failed, so.
Well, I understand that, but what happens to, you know,
so we have to go back to,
No, we don't have to go back to anything. There just needs to be another motion on something different. So
Something
at this
different.
point, we've just gotten to the point where we're not going to do anything.
right,
That was my concern from the get-go, is that I don't want to have a place where we have no improvement for anything. I think that I can go, especially after seeing and hearing Mr. Pardo talk, I think that the original scope,
The original scope was a gross square footage, correct? What we were talking about up there? Or
4,307.
4,300. So gross square footage and usable square footage, those are two different numbers, right? So the gross square footage up there that was 4,000 something, the actual usable square footage was something less.
I
Right.
understand.
And
But
so
I guess
that didn't-
I'm with Jeff that going the original bond scope.
so is there another motion?
But going with the
I
original.
think I'll make a motion that we include everything here with the exception of going back to the original bond scope for the press box.
In other words, you mean, the word accept there threw me off. You mean go back to the original bond concept on the press box plus all the other non-controversial items?
Yes.
A second.
5-2 vote from before. I mean, I don't understand.
Well, it's two
Just
separate. It's two separate
Two
things.
separate,
Voted for the design and the.
We told PBK to go do it, and then we had to come back and accept it. So now we haven't accepted it.
Fair enough.
And so what is this motion again? Was there a second to the motion?
Our motion, yes.
What was the motion again?
Go back to
The
the,
original bond scope with the added seating to the visitor side, the new sound system, the renovating the officials room and concession stand as is listed in the agenda this evening.
But you can't do that because you don't have a GMP.
We
we
will,
just have to make a
we will come
suggestion
back
for
with the
PBK
GMP
to
as
go
soon as
back
we
and
can.
do that.
You've essentially delayed the project a year.
Yep.
That's what I want to point
Right.
out. That
Yep.
delays the project a year.
Yes.
But then once again, it won't be an effective, appropriate space.
Yeah,
It'll
no,
be
I'm-
too
I'm-
small, and then we'll have to come back years later to do it again.
I disagree completely with that statement, but
That's
I
what our
understand
athletic
that
director
that's
just
your-
said.
That's your opinion on the issue.
That's also his opinion.
Been a motion. Is there a second?
Well, again, though, I mean.
But the
you know,
motion in a second. I
the
think we just
motion
need to
right
go ahead
now
and vote.
on the table is that we accept,
Wait a minute. Does that mean we
Don't
accept
have-
the GMP for
No.
everything except the press box? Is that what that means?
Well, I don't
No,
think
no,
the
no, it
GMP is
doesn't.
valid. Once you remove something out of it
Yeah.
that's big, you're gonna have
Yeah.
to go back.
To go
and-
back and get a new
And again,
GMP.
I need
that's
to
going to
retract.
delay the project a year.
Probably need to retract the
The
motion.
motion.
So
and then-
I'll retract the motion.
Well, I would say this, you've delayed the press box for sure. I think we may be able to come back in a couple of months with the seating and some of the other things, the non-controversial items has been stated, and still complete those this season, and just delay the press box itself into the following year. Or we could wait and just do everything at one time a year from now.
No, I'd rather go ahead and get the other updates done.
Either way, it pushes us
Can we-
back a year.
Well,
Is
is
it-
it for the press box?
The press
No,
box.
no, I'm sorry.
Just the
The
press
press box. Okay, just the press box. Okay.
just the press box. The visitor stands.
I think
Which
it's
I
not.
don't like.
I
I
don't
don't
think
like
you're gonna
either.
get. I don't think you're gonna get the pricing. I mean, I think you break it out.
Yeah,
I
I
think.
just
I don't
don't-
think it's gonna be cost effective to do it separated. I think you've got to.
It will add
You've
money.
got to. Yeah, I think you've got to GMP all of it together and build it.
So,
Well, why couldn't we make
Let
it?
me add something to that real quick.
okay, go ahead.
That would be true if I didn't have a contractor on site anyway. I've got a contractor on site until March of 2020, working in your fine arts, working in your auditorium, working all over campus. They have a bid from the bleacher manufacturer that's gonna do it right now. Steel and raw materials like that typically inflate at a pretty constant cost. I've got a 30-day guarantee on it right now. You're probably not gonna do better than it. If I didn't have a contractor on board, you'd be absolutely right. I do, so that's why my recommendation is that we take those bids, I can break it all out. We can bring you either next month or the month after. They can start writing their subcontractors and bring you that updated GMP in a month or two, just depending on how complicated it gets. I might be able to bring you one for the bleachers next month and the rest of the next month, but it'll all roll into that same package of Pearland High School, which we've already got set. And
So-
so,
Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
for those items, you're not gonna get a better price, even if I have to spend some time with my contractor and your bond committee breaking it out, because they're already there. And so that's why my recommendation previously was to go ahead and do it, because you're not gonna beat it. And then if you want me to redesign you the press box smaller, I'll do that. We'll come back. But all of the other scope doesn't get impacted by that press box. The ticket booth is on the other side, the visitors is on the other side, the parking's on the other side, the officials' office or showers is in a completely different building. Whoever builds that press box,
So Jeff, there would be at least minor differences to the GMP that you could bring back next month, if I understand you right.
there'd be major differences, because about 6 million is gonna get removed.
Well, no, I don't mean that, but I thought what you're saying is that the other things are pretty much fixed. So if you remove the press box out of it, it's a quick path for you to come back with a GMP on the
That's
remaining
exactly what I'm
part.
saying.
Okay.
Well, why can't we
So-
just, okay, so let me just play the devil, just ask a stupid question. So we have a GMP, which is, I understand the GMP process, but these contractors, I'm assuming Stewart, they've already evaluated this project. So we're reducing the footprint of the press box. How hard could it possibly be, or long could it take them to do that?
Well,
What
I gotta
about a
redraw
change
the whole
order
thing.
type thing? Reduce the scope of the, I would think that going larger
I
would be
need-
more difficult
I
than
need to order
going
the steel
smaller.
tomorrow to guarantee that it's gonna open. I gotta redraw the whole thing. It's gonna take
But,
at
you-
least.
but
a
you don't
month.
have to order steel because we're not supporting. You're not. Are you adding?
I'm still
you s-
ordering some.
Yeah, so
I'm still ordering all the
to
stuff in the
expand
back.
because you have to expand back, right?
I'm expanding back, absolutely.
It's a complete redesign.
But let me ask you this.
but you're doing that either way, right?
I'm doing it
the,
either way, but we had always predicated it, like, when we come back to you in September, it's go or delay a year. Like, when we were talking about it in February and we were talking about it in March, we had time. But it was always predicated, if I come back and we can't agree, it's a year. So it's a year on the facade, it's a year on the press box. I can get you the visitors bleachers for football season next year. I can get you the officials locker room. I can get you the concession stands, press box. Sorry.
Madam President, I'm not willing to wait a year.
So-
I would agree with if there's no expanded bond scope for that press box, which I think isn't necessary. I'd be willing to go with the original bond scope.
So hold on a second. So let me ask you
But
this.
it's still waiting a year.
Still a year.
Why does that?
That's the point.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. See, I'm not willing to wait a year.
Wait, So- what?
We can't afford it.
So if we went back to
Gosh.
4307 or whatever it is, I'm gonna call it for numbers' sake. Because the facade is really important, and I've said that from the beginning. Maybe I can't answer this, but would anybody be in favor of going back to the original scope and then adding the facade? So we get both things, not spend that much money.
Well, I say that we close this issue and then move forward to the facade discussion. I think I'll make a motion that we move forward with all of the, can I say,
Controversial.
non-controversial items as discussed.
You're gonna have to break it out, aren't
Break
you?
it out.
Ask-
Yeah.
No, I think
But
you're right.
that's what that means. They have to ask.
Adding
for-
seats.
But that motion.
Everything except for the press
Press
box.
box.
That motion's already on the table.
Yes, that motion's
The
already on the
motion's
table.
already
Second, too, I think, right?
Yes.
So can we vote on that one?
So, can you repeat it again?
So that we're gonna move
Everything's
forward
about
with
the
all the
press
I had,
non-controversial
your
items.
motion was seconded by Mr. Berry. So,
And
ab-
it's-
right.
next one's-
Can you just repeat the motion? Just
But the
for
motion
clarification?
is just a directive to clarify.
no.
No, the motion
The
is to
motion-
move forward with all the non-controversial items as discussed in the meeting.
Everything but the,
Correct.
but the,
But
but
Basically,
the
it takes
press
out-
box.
She's asking to bring back a GMP without the
The press box.
Essentially, what that
or
means
with the
is
bond scope press box. Is that correct?
Yes.
with a bond scope press box.
So not doing the press box, not doing the sound system.
Well, it's doing all of that.
Sound system.
It's
Well,
just
we
that
can't do the sound system without the
Right,
press
correct.
box.
Well, no,
Correct.
she's saying bring back the press box. Well, no, the press box is a year. The
Right,
press box
so
is
also
a year
the
away.
sound system
So
Right.
everything, yeah, and so everything else is
and the lighting.
there.
But we had lighting's included in the non-controversial.
Well, but they said that they
issues.
needed the press box in order to do the lighting and the
So-
sound. Is that correct?
So the things
No,
we
just
can
the
do
sound.
are the locker room, the concession stands, and the bleachers. The sound and the press box would be delayed.
I don't know.
I can't.
Okay, so
Motion?
there's been a motion by Ms. Carbone and a
year.
second by Mr. Berry. I'm calling for the vote. All those in favor?
Hold on a second. We're breaking, I'm trying to figure this out. So we're breaking this out, and we're not expanding the press box at all right now. We're gonna
No.
wait.
That is correct.
Or the
It's gonna
sound
continue for another year,
Right.
before they can work on the press box. Is that correct?
That is correct. So
I just wanted to let you know, I confirmed with our contractor that it's a year. There's no way I can delay it 2 months or a month to
So-
redraw.
Because we're still in we're still in
we're voting.
discussion.
We're voting.
We're voting
Right,
actually.
we're voting.
So
And
we
but
should
I don't
actually
think
just go
everybody's
through
voted
this.
yet.
No, we haven't voted yet.
Just don't vote for it. We need
No, what I'm-
clarification.
So my question, Mr. Chapman, if this vote does not pass and we go with the original bond scope of the press box with everything tonight, would that still delay us a year?
Yes.
Yes.
Because we just voted 30 minutes ago with something else?
They drew the plans up for the expanded press box.
That
is
They've
correct.
But that's
done
not
the plans for the.
those aren't, there's different plans up there. I'm sorry, maybe I'm mistaken.
The plans that I just showed you of all those three items-
4307?
Right, that was a schematic design
Okay.
presentation. So I
Wasn't
had
a-
to redraw.
It wasn't
It was just,
official
it was just to give you an idea of what is going to happen to your actual building.
Okay.
It's not representative
Delay
of
it
what I
all
could
year.
bid tomorrow. So right now, I think you have three options, right? You can delay it till all the projects are done, and then come back and see what you want to do. You can tell me to do what I bid right now, or you can say, give me the non-controversial items in a month, or a month and a half, or 2, and redraw the press box smaller, and bring that back to me in a year. Seems to me to be your 3 options.
There's a vote on the floor or the
For
table.
option number 3, right?
For option number 3, which is just wants more time to tell them to go back and draw bond scope plans.
Yeah.
But we're
Bond
gonna
scope
go ahead
plans
and
for the press
proceed
box.
with the seating on the visitor side and the renovation of officials' room and concession stands.
pretty much everything else.
Everything
Yeah.
else but
Except the sound system
yeah.
and the press
Everything
box
else, but yeah, and the sound system because it's in there.
for a year.
Pickle.
Which will take a year. Not, it's.
All right, all those in favor?
1, 2, 3. We're back.
So 3, that one doesn't pass.
Fails.
Motion
Off on the
fails.
vote, please.
The no vote.
No, can you repeat?
Lance, could you vote no? Could everybody vote no if you vote no? Okay. So now, Madam President, I'm going to ask that we postpone this item. Table this item and table the next item and move on to the academic report or to the other items, and then we'll come back to this.
Well,
Motion made on
go ahead.
the table.
Tabling
table these
this
two.
allows us to set this to the side, move on to something else, and come back to
And
this
come back to this.
here on the same day. I apologize for all the delays, but so that's my motion.
Seconded by Mr. Floyd. All those in favor?
We have a discussion on one point first.
Yes.
It is 8:30. The best part of this presentation is student achievement and the most important part, and it's
And we wanna go to
8:30
it.
at night. I would rather, in view of this extended conversation, move that to October, where it gets its fair due, than try to do it from 8:30 to 9:15 tonight. That's up to y'all.
Wait, can you repeat that, sir?
In other words, what I'm saying is, let's delay the student achievement, that big, long presentation,
continue
which
this
is
discussion.
very good, until when we're a little fresher next month. I asked Ellen if she thought that was a good idea, and she says that's fine with her.
So do we need a motion for that that is different from the motion just
Well,
made?
he was suggesting that we move
My
on.
suggestion is that we put this to the side and go to that presentation. Because that's obviously our mission, right?
Right.
We're
that-
not,
That's precedent, right.
yeah. So anyway, that's what I said. I said table this and we'll go to the presentation. Dr. Kelly recommends that we push the presentation to October, which I'm gonna leave my motion on the table. Actually, I'll rescind my motion. I'll ask for a 5-minute recess.
That's fine. 5-minute recess.
All right.
Second?
Okay.
Does that require a vote? Can we just recess?
I think we can recess. No, 5 minutes. 8:35. Okay, I'm reconvening after, we're back in session at 8:41.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, there's a motion on the table.
I'd like to make a motion that we complete all non-controversial issues, including the locker room, concession stand, the visitor side, and I think it says the speaker system. And postpone the discussion of the press box expansion until the other projects on the bond have been bid out.
Second?
Okay. So there is a motion on the table by Ms. Carbone to go with everything other than the press box. Yes? And that we will delay discussion of the press box until all the other scope has been bid out and we know what we're looking at.
We talking scope or GMP?
Oh,
The s- the
Don, go ahead.
bond
I would-
scope.
The bond scope.
I would say, we need to come back to you in 6 months. We won't have the elementaries bid out then, but we'll have some very good estimates.
Okay?
Just to
So
clarify, this is to
just
come back with the bond scope drawn out.
No,
this is
No.
to
No,
postpone the
press box is
discussion.
being we're not even looking at the press box right now.
Anybody got a dry erase board?
We're having the same vote.
So, okay.
Oh, the vote before was that we would go back to the original bond scope in addition to
With
having
the
everything
GMP.
complete right now.
And that's not this vote.
That's not this vote.
Motion is having all
Everything
other
else taken care of.
items, and then postponing the discussion about what the expansion is going to look like until everything else in the bond has been
Right.
bid out.
Right, very good.
Did you
So
both
that-
second that?
So
Second?
there,
I'll second
so
that.
there was a motion made and a second by Mr. Murphy. Okay, any further discussion?
So, inside of those, you said, can you repeat that, each item, so we can make sure we're all on the same page?
Everything listed there, adding seating to the visitor side, minus the new sound system because they're saying that needs to be a part of the press box, renovating the official room and the concession stand, and the bleachers for the visitor side were also discussed.
You're taking out the sound system?
Well, the sound system,
Until,
Chris, I'm not trying to be a
No.
semantics. In your original motion, you said the sound system.
no, excluding. the
Oh, she
sound-
did it say word excluding?
Excluding the sound system and press box.
Knowing
I
full
didn't
well that
read-
this will likely
Okay, that's okay,
mean,
fair enough.
this will likely mean the construction will be more expensive just due to inflation, the contractor, all that stuff.
Yes.
well, I
Well,
guess so, yeah.
I would
Maybe.
just like to say, based on what you're about to do, you could delay 2 years, the press box.
Oh,
Because we won't have the pricing on the elementary for about 9 months, and that would delay us 2 years. So I just caution you what you're about to do.
Mr. Tillers, if you said 6 months, you have estimates, but in
We'll have
9
some-
months, you'll have firm bids.
Right.
Okay,
correct.
those estimates have been pretty sharp,
Yeah,
right?
they
So
were
we'll
pretty
have
shored
6
up.
months, let's just say we'll have
6 months,
an
we'll add that
idea of everything all in 6 months.
In 6
Right.
months, we'll have very
But
good estimates, right?
And so then we can come back and talk about the expanded press box, and I guess we'll have to come back and talk about the facade as well. But okay, thank you.
Okay.
2 years.
All right. Call for the
But to be fair, I mean, to add to this discussion, this is what we talked about with voters, that we weren't going to add additional projects to the bond dollars until we had completed the bond scope and had everything bid out. So this is not going against anything different. I know it's 2 years from what we originally talked about, but that's what we said we were going to do from the very get-go.
I think 2 years is an unacceptable delay for that project. I don't see that as feasible.
Well,
That's
if you came back in 6 months and we made a decision then,
But would we be?
is that a year? We're
If
delaying
you-
it a year?
Yeah, you'd only delay 1 year if you
Right.
made the decision in 6
In
months.
6 months.
Right.
okay.
But with the board members who are voting no because they're not sure what these definite prices will be, would they be comfortable voting for that in 6 months? Without, I mean, with the GMPs, but not with the set amount?
I guess if you want my opinion, I mean, if I can ask this question, you can answer it if you want to or not. But if we got down to the end and we had enough money, would you support the expanded press box?
After we've had
Sean, would you
discussion?
support the?
I think you should. I mean,
Or we have to get.
if you're
I
going to call
completely
individuals
understand
out,
it. No,
listen,
no, no.
listen,
Yeah.
listen. If you're going to
No.
call, ask around to vote.
Yeah.
Rebecca voted for it in May.
Yeah.
And change. If there's anybody, I understand your question. If there's anybody here that thinks they're going to change your vote a year from now or 2 years from now, go ahead and speak up. And you're more than welcome to speak up. I mean, you know, but I mean, you're asking around about what to vote. I originally voted in May. No. I voted tonight. No. That's not changing. So
I put
are you
the,
going
I
to
put the
ask everyone?
stipulation. I just said everyone,
Sure.
and I asked you, right? Because you sit next to me. You're a good friend of mine. I thought we could have a conversation about it.
That's probably my
But-
fault. I apologize for bringing that up.
No. I'm just saying. But if the point is, if the expanded press box, as what we've shown here, that what's in the GMP tonight, is just completely distasteful to the majority of the board now, then I think that's important for us to know now. I mean, because even, and I put the additional stipulation on there saying that, what if we got to the end and we knew that we had enough money, right? And now I'll say that if you feel like I put you too much on the spot, I apologize.
Look,
No,
I will
agree.
tell you right now.
I agree.
But the point
Listen,
is,
we've
if
spent an
we've
hour
got enough
talking
money-
about this.
Yep.
My position hasn't changed. Jeff's position hasn't changed since this was the directive in May, right?
Right.
We now have the GMP in front of us. So, again, if you think that there's something that's going to come back and change after these drawings are done, prices are only going to go up. So I agree with your sentiment, which is
And at this
if you're not
point-
going to change your mind, then
At
this
this
is a moot
point-
point
at
because
this
prices
point-
are only going to go up.
I think the best choice for this board is to do nothing. Because I think this has gotten so convoluted and ridiculous. I think we just ought to roll with the rig the way it is. So,
I don't agree.
before
That's
that-
not the motion on the table.
Is there a
So,
motion on the table?
The
No,
motion on
that's
the-
not the motion on the table, but
No.
that's what I got to say about it. I'm
Make my decision. I have a question for Chapman. Mr. Chapman, how long would it take you to do a rendering of, the original bond scope, right, press box, right? The 4307 with maybe down to the T, what it's going to look like for the contractors or whatever. And if
0
we see that, it's still delayed a year, correct? Yes.
Please turn your attention to the monitor.
Thank you.
I'm just that fast.
That's still delayed a year, though, is what you're saying.
yeah.
yeah. And I think it's clear. I think it's clear what we got going on. So let's take Madam President, I would ask that we just go ahead and take the vote on this.
Okay, so the motion on the table is,
Is to complete all non-controversial issues, including the locker room, concession stand, and we talked about the
Additional seating.
the visitor
visitor
seating,
seating
I think that's it.
the officials
and the officials, yes.
locker room.
And postpone the discussion about the press box expansion until a further date, a later date.
Yeah, which includes
Is
the
that a line
sound
item?
system.
No, I wanna make sure.
Yeah, it would include the sound system that we'd come back on.
Right.
Tends to be 2 years, right?
Okay? And there was a second by Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, by
Yeah.
Sean.
Yes? Okay.
But are we in discussion?
Yes.
I just want to say that I do concur with Mr. Gooden that if folks on this board aren't willing to spend more than the original bond scope, then this is a moot point because all we're doing is delaying
Well, I'm willing to spend it.
any.
I voted for it before. But I also am wanting to have discussions and to see what it's going to look like after everything is done. That hasn't changed.
After what is done, I mean,
Everything. Once we have a better idea on what everything is going to be, and I have a discussion with the Bond Oversight Committee, and they get to see too that, you know what, we stuck with what we said we're going to do, and at the end of that, when we said if we have more money, we will decide what to do with it. And I'm going to say that I'm sticking with that expanded. I'm saying it right now.
Well, let's just go ahead and vote. That would be my.
Any further
Let's just
discussion?
go ahead and vote.
Okay, hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor?
5.
All right. Motion carries.
Would you please call for the no vote?
5-4, yes. All those against, Floyd and Gooden.
Let me give you what I think is the best case scenario after this. In 6 months' time, we will have much more of a certainty about prices. We can bring back the press box and make a decision on it. And in the meantime, somewhere maybe about 5 months from now, when we have an idea of other projects that people might prioritize with leftover bond funds, we include that, and then the board meets with the bond oversight committee and sees if they can come to an agreement, as Charles originally suggested, and then move on.
And to Mr. Gooden's point, you're $12 million under budget right now with the expanded press box. So you're inevitably only going to be further under budget. So again, but for me, it's not about whether you're under budget or not, because we're going to be under budget. It's about whether you want to spend $6 million to build a press box. That's my personal vote.
But you see what I'm saying, Charles? I
Such
mean,
a lack
Sean, if we come back in 6 months from now, I assume your position will be the same, but we will have a decision at that point.
Right.
My original decision, motion, would have possibly kept the entire project together. Maybe delayed it a year, but kept the entire project together. Now, Mr. Chapman, if I'm correct, going back and meeting with the bond oversight committee and then trying to come back with this thing in October, you said that's a year, right? Because we're not going to make football season.
That's correct.
That's correct. But still, I just think this is I don't mean this. You guys know how I feel about you, right? But I think we're suffering from a lack of vision. And it just kind of hurts, right? Anyway.
Well,
I think-
so
I think, Madam President,
let me
we
add
should
some,
move
let
on
me
to the
add
next
my
agenda
vision
item.
if I'm
I'll move
lack of
on.
vision. My vision for this whole thing is nothing. I don't want to put a Band-Aid on it. My goal is in 10 to 15 years we're going to have a new stadium. Why the heck do I want to spend $8 million updating a stadium today with a $12 million deficit that we're having existing on us? $20 million. We're at almost 30%, 40% of the cost of a new stadium.
But we're not going to build a new stadium, right? And we're married to this facility. I think
We're
you
gonna
know
build a new
that.
stadium?
And I
You
think
think
you
in
know
20
that when
years
you
we're not
talk
gonna have a
about
new
the
stadium?
bond dollars and you talk about our budget deficit, that those are two different buckets of money.
No,
And
I
if you
totally
add them
understand.
together, that's fallacious. That's not, it's not. There's two different buckets of money, right? Can we move on to the next item and take no action?
Two different buckets of money.
No. Yes. The bond dollars and the M&O dollars are two different buckets of money.
Okay,
I'm not talking about M&O
Let's
dollars
just move
whatsoever.
on. Let's just move on.
Okay, we are moving on to consider
Move on when
to
you say we'll
approve
move on. That's good. I'm
Let's
good
just
move
for
on.
that.
GMP for the rig facade. And,
We're going to table that one.
okay, I am very happy to hear that, I think.
No, we don't have to make it. We don't have to take any action.
No,
on it.
no
Let's not even
action.
table it. Let's just take no action.
No act.
So
No,
is
we
that,
can.
Not, I don't think we're going to get there, Lance.
That's ball game, y'all. Ball game.
oh, no action, Madam President.
Just
Well-
take no action. We'll
Table and.
No action. All right.
So if we take no action, we're not going to talk about this issue at all?
We're just not saying that it needs to be discussed at the next board meeting.
No, that actually just says we're not. So if we want to put it off until October, somebody's got to postpone it until the October meeting.
Well, yeah. But all we're doing with no action is saying that it's dead for now. and
Yeah.
that we can bring it back at some point in the future.
Well, I tell you what. Let's just talk about it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, the facade. Anybody want to build a facade?
I'm not opposed to the facade.
Like now? Anybody want to build it now?
Build it now? No.
Okay. All right. We don't have the votes to build it now. We don't have the votes to do the press box.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
We can't build the facade.
Without knowing what the press box looks like.
Okay, so then yes.
Okay.
All right. No action.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Dr. Kelly?
Okay, so are we doing the student, that's the only issue left, right?
Yeah.
Is the student performance, do we want to do that tonight, or we want to delay it till October?
I would recommend delay it till October.
So
But
it's-
I'm just one person, so. I did.
Mr. Gooden would like to delay. You would like to delay.
Delay.
Delay? Okay. So we're going to delay it until October. All right. So this meeting is adjourned at 8:55.